All right, peace, family. You're tuning in to the pro-black perspective on KWAZ Radio. Today, we're going to have another open discussion on Yurugu, and this time I'm going to change the rules a bit. I couldn't narrow it down to six passages, so instead of six passages, we're going to do seven passages, but we're going to do 7 minutes each, right? I guess seven. This chapter was so amazing, and I want to I want the people on the panel, because it's an open discussion, to tell us how you what about these chapters, what about this book, how are you enjoying it, and all that jazz. So start off with introducing yourself, of course, and then speak further on it.
Yeah, my name is Ptah. I'm from the Caribbean, a very small island. Chapter 6, the rhetorical ethic. It's I think it was very, very good because it's what I'm going to say this Wazungu do all the time. They speak one way and then they act a different way. And you can see it's very institutionalized. They always act that way. Yeah, there's like the behavior that they always show, and that was very, very interesting. How the sister explains this. Yeah, like the Christian ethic of not lying is very not common amongst them, although they preach it, but they act a different way.
Yeah, I thought that was fascinating. Uh, okay, anyone else have an opinion?
I'm Concours. I'm from France. Originally from the Caribbean, of course. The French colonized parts, and for me, these chapters they are very revealing because actually this is a very detailed analysis on what the Yurugu are and the way the culture operate in the world, and this rhetoric and behavior part is like a testimony to history, basically, because we can see like the brother was previously saying, that basically they tell you something and they act differently, and it's very symptomatic with them. Again, I'm enjoying this book like 100%. Like everyone should be, it should be a mandatory reading.
Okay, well
Definitely.
let's get the government up, and then we could mandate that. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
let's do it.
Or just do for self, probably have like Sunday studies and stuff like this.
Sure. We a day off, huh? No, God, okay. But yeah, I absolutely like this was one of the sections that I I saw previously. At least I think it was this section. I still don't know if we got to the point where we're talking about, because I feel like we're talking about the rhetorical ethic, and I think that's something that I like stuck with me. As I like might have like randomly opened the book somewhere, and not just that. I recall sometimes like I would go to the library here in America or whatever, and there'd be a guy over my, like a white guy over my shoulder who's like reading a book, or he's like reading like 5 books, and like the topic of each book is like the art of deception. And it's just like I'm like, I thought you already knew this stuff, but but what I see in these people is that, yeah, deception is so important in this society, but it's so unimportant to us that we almost always get fooled. And I don't know if you guys followed what was happening on Twitter recently, but just for the audience, I'll tell them. On Twitter there was this huge. Apparently, I might have been part of it, but there was this huge religious, this huge pushback against Christianity, right? And I mean, I obviously put my 2 cents in because I'm reading Yurugu, and I kind of feel like I might, I've earned my ability to give 2 cents. But realistically speaking, you'll find that these like a lot of black people are caught up in the rhetoric of white folk, and they're caught up in the rhetoric of Christianity. And of course, we're going to talk about it today. But I might have chosen that because of that. But the thing, but it's just amazing because it's like we know, for instance, I used to organize in Brooklyn. There's this organization. It's called the United African Movement. I used to be a part of it. More or less as an underling. As a foot soldier. You gotta earn your stripes. It's not like you start off at the top, right? A lot of us don't know that you don't start at the top. But the thing is that I'm there, doing my whatever, and I had an elder there, and the elder was telling me, things that the natives said. Now everybody knows this stuff now, but the natives would say the white man speaks with a forked tongue, and Cicely, who was here last week, she was saying that, I think the original term in Ghana for, the term that we recognize as stranger, I don't want to say it's Oyinbo, but there's another term like it that we think, like today we think it means foreigner, right? But she was saying the origins of it is, in fact, the people who deceive when they talk. Like people, or as Mirvani would say, first world people recognized white folk were just unusually deceptive. And it's kind of refreshing to pick up a book that not only says it but like proves it or shows its consistency and its value even by the words of Wazungu themselves. There's a value in deceiving other people. And I mean, I'm not going to say that they're like I would point to Sun Tzu, who's not European obviously, but who's I would say Eurasian, but he's a Chinese guy, and he was saying all warfare is based off of deception, and I would point to him and say, yes, what I would say is all Eurasian wars are built off of deception. Cicely came in. Hi Cicely. But all Eurasian wars are based off of deception. But what I would say is that because deception is so fundamental to war, the fact that they're always deceiving us kind of informs us that they're always at war with us, and I think that's something that we can take away, or we should take away, and
Yeah, very good.
Okay, thank you.
It's a very good remark. Very good remark.
All right, Cicely, do you want to tell us anything about this chapter before we get started? And thank you for joining us, sis.
No, let's just go.
Okay, all right. So, so we're going to go to page 317, and we're going to kind of touch again on this Christian ethic. So, because it's really important for us to understand this. So let's go. The idea inherent here is crucial, for it implies an unfolding of the Asili. What I've argued earlier and wish to reiterate and develop further in this discussion is that what is invariably referred to as the conflict between Christian values and European imperialistic and aggressive behavior has indeed never represented conflict, but is to be understood in terms of the intent of Christian ideology. As I said, all religious statements are likely to be shaped in time so as to be consistent with the nationalistic objectives of the culture within which they are created. Religious statements provide ideological, spiritual, and emotional support for the maintenance of cultural entities and to help to define simultaneously as they reflect the definitions of the collective personality of the individuals within them. European culture in this respect, no different from any other, is in this respect no different from any other. What varies from culture to culture is its ideological content, its asili. The character and definition of its nationalism, the religious statement, and the cultural utamawazo necessarily share the same characteristics. This is true whether the culture is basically the traditional and sacred, in which case the two are barely distinct, or if it is secular, where religion becomes separated and institutionalized. In either case, the religious statement of a particular culture must by definition be consistent with the values of the culture, as both religion and value are determined by the asili. It is the function of any official religion to give ideological support to the culture as a whole. Once established and formalized, all religious ideologies are, in a sense, nationalistic ideologies. In spite of the elements in the Christian formulation that can be traced to Africa, Kemet, Christian ideology is essentially a creation of the European asili and can only be understood as a statement that supports the values of that culture. European cultural commitment is unique among nationalist ideologies and in fact becomes internationalist in expression. Its primary objective is the worldwide expansion of European culture and the resulting control of other peoples. The Christian formulation, when hardened into ideology, developed as consistent and not in conflict with this objective. As European nationalism and the European Ultima Rojo were both dependent on and directed towards others, people, places, cultures to be controlled, to have power over, so the Christian statement was a mandate for archaic European Roman control, and propaganda was addressed to the objects of that control as well. No matter how subtly and ingeniously this function was performed, the fact remains that what is usually referred to as the Christian ethic, universal love, brotherhood, and peace, the meek shall inherit the earth, turn the other cheek, love thine enemy, once officially recognized by the state, was not designed for the assimilation or moral guidance of the Europeans. What is referred to as the Protestant ethic is another case to be discussed in relation to European behavior in Chapter 7. And we'll talk about this later. Sorry. There is something wrong with the cultural historical analysis that maintains that a culture as successfully sustained and as persistent as that of Europe could have been created, have survived, developed, and intensified to such mammoth proportions under the continual handicap of a religious statement that basically contradicted and conflicted with that growth in the form that it took. This is where the contradiction lies, and this ethological contradiction alone should have given rise to other explanations of the Christian ethic in its European context. The Asili concept demands an ideologically consistent explanation of cultural phenomena. To recapitulate briefly, the Christian statement said that religion should be universal, thereby discrediting other religions that were obviously and avowedly culture-bound. It claimed, in fact, to be the properly universalistic religion, giving European conquerors the moral justification they needed to turn their politically aggressive actions into seemingly altruistic ones. But what is most important here is the Christian ideology pronounced as virtuous through very modes of behavior that immobilize a culture politically. Renders its members susceptible to European control and less able to resist. The pursuit of peace, the love of one's enemies, which concretely implies the betrayal of oneself, the brotherhood of man, an abstraction that concretely manifests itself as the denial of one's culture, and therefore one's ideology and commitment. All of these elements combine to form the idea psycho-cultural counterpart to political subjugation, and it succeeded in doing the job that it was culturally designed to do. It did not affect the overwhelming historical pattern of European behavior, which is characterized by antithetical tendencies to those mentioned above. The growth of the empire was not impeded by passivity and love, rather it thrived on the intensely aggressive and hostile behavior that the Asili of the culture encouraged. European theorists have invariably failed to interpret correctly the function of the Christian ethic in its European context, a failure that has been endemic to Western social theory, whether representative of the right or the left, whether avowedly nationalistic or critical. So that's the passage. I'm going to put 7 minutes. I hope everybody could have heard that. I'm going to put 7 minutes in, and we're going to, like, anybody, yeah, all right, I put 7 minutes on the clock. Anybody have any comments on that?
I have one general comment, and it's relevant for every part of chapter 6 and 7. This is why this book requires a group study. I have to read both of those chapters probably twice, certain parts 3 or 4 times, maybe 5, and I'm still like, oh my God, what just happened here? I honestly feel like some of these concepts we have worked and we understand, experientially, on the ground from just living and working and organizing. But just to understand them theoretically, it's been very challenging for me. So I just want to put that out there just in case nobody else wants to admit that.
Anybody else want to admit it? No, I'm joking. I mean, yeah, it was challenging. I had to reread it. I actually, I was pushing it on the in terms of completion of reading. You know what I'm saying? I'm surprised you read it 2 or 3 times. That's sure. I mean, that's a lot of reading. Because this was a heavy read. But anybody have any? I mean, my thing is this: that what I want to say about this is that. So the thing I guess I might have probably got in trouble for, if you could get in trouble, on Twitter for, was saying, like Christianity is inherently imperialistic, and of course, that was a little bit, it's considered divisive, but it's kind of, I feel like that would be my interpretation here, of how this Christian ethic being put onto our people to pursue peace, love our enemies, brotherhood of man, that betrays us, and then how people would say, oh, this is the universal religion, we're looking for brotherhood and peace, and blah, blah, blah. Like, it fits it suits the narrative that we want to hear, it's able to deceive us, whereas really its main purpose, is to export a European culture, and a European culture over our culture.
I would totally agree. Sorry to interrupt you there, but just to add something, like I would totally agree, because like when you look at it, there is like two parts in this in its functioning. Basically, you have the part that mandates the imperialistic behavior, as in like it should be universal. It should expand throughout the globe, and it's the one and only correct religion. Okay, this is the part motivating those who accept it. And on the receiving hand, on the receiving end of this, you have the part where it say, you should turn the cheek, you should love your brother, and so forth and so on, like all those Christian rhetoric propaganda. And it helps the functioning of this Christian imperialistic behavior in this. Like you have one side that is for the conqueror, and the other side that is for like the weak-minded, I would say, like the one on the receiving all this rage.
Yeah, that's exactly. I mean, anybody else have a comment?
No, the brother is right. He's definitely right. For the oppressor, it's justified, and for the oppressed, he thinks. The thing is, we are, that was the same topic on Twitter. Black people are the only ones who are living up to this ethic of turning the other cheek and loving their neighbor and doing good and forgiving 70 times 70. But the ones who came with the religion are definitely not living up to this ethic. But the brother is definitely right. It has definitely two functions: one imperialistic, one for the oppressor, and one for the oppressed. To love and accept the oppressor.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting like truism too, that because I think one of the comments that, well, I think I was saying, because I feel like Islam, she doesn't go into Islam for obvious reasons. It's not really European per se, but I felt like your Islam copies, like it's like a derivative of Christianity, and it keeps that whole conversion thing. So I included Islam.
Definitely.
And
Definitely.
yeah, and so one of the objections I've heard is, of course, Malcolm X, blah, blah. But what I noticed is that Malcolm X used to refer to Christianity, or used to demean Christianity for its docility, and also call it a white man's religion. So I thought that was something that, a lot of people tend to ignore. But of course, Islam, if Christianity is a white man's religion, then Islam would also be an Arab man's religion, So I thought that was something that was also something that we don't really address. I mean, it's not going to be addressed in the book per se, but, by the way, is there an echo? All right, but I think that that's something that we should, that we could add to this conversation as a whole. Anybody else have any comments on this section, though?
Yeah, I have a couple. One, the first one is a question. Why do you think Dr. Ali did not include a discussion of Islam in Yurugu as well? That's one. And then the other thing is, I think we should be mindful about how we approach this, because people are literally married to these belief systems. And it's not going to be like a clean, pull away. There will be bleeding, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, geez.
And, we're not, a book is one thing, and a theory and an idea is one thing, but actually working with people and, trying to put institutions together and get work done on a day-to-day basis is really a different ball of wax. So we are always trying to figure out, how to increase people's awareness of what they may already know, as opposed to just bopping them over the head like, you're an idiot, you've been following this ideology the whole time. I mean, how far are we going with that?
Oh,
and
yeah.
And I know that there are people who disagree with me, that people should just be hit over the head. But this is what I'm putting out there, just as a person who actually has to work with people who embrace Islam, who embrace Christianity, and how do we actually diffuse that bond? You know what I mean? As opposed to let it come between us and interrupt our flow of whatever goals it is that we're trying to achieve actually on the ground.
No, I feel
So
you.
this is where theory and work, deserve, a conversation.
I totally agree with you, sis, because you have like the difference between the theory and the practice. And actually, I'm very anti-Abrahamic religion. If you follow me on Twitter, and that's for me a crucial point, because it's one that can make us or break us. Because let's say, okay, we all unite under this Pan-Africanist group, like One Africa. But what will happen? Because we know for sure that when it comes to the decision, the Christians will turn to Christianity, the Muslim will turn to Islam. And those are not compatible, because we won't fool ourselves by saying, oh yeah, but we will be black first and blah 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 blah. We can already see how it's working right now with the Europeans, with the Turks and the Western Europeans. Mm-hmm. So we definitely have to address this question. And I don't have an answer for sure, but it's because it's hard. For me, as soon as you're awake, as soon as you know your history, you must have an issue with those religions. You must. You cannot do otherwise. And I hope that awakened people will just try to rationalize and ultimately abandon those religions. But I'm not sure. But definitely, it's a big question.
Well, let me
don't you think we're putting almost an undue amount of importance on these religions in terms of in terms of us obtaining our objectives, in a sense, because from my understanding, we didn't really start embracing Christianity until very recently, like in the late 1800s, mid to late 1800s for Africans in America, and even after that in the last 50 years or so here on the ground in Africa, on the continent. Mm-hmm. So it's not like we were not facing imperialist, onslaught in the 300 or 400 years before that. And it took a very long time for Christianity to encroach on all of us. Mm-hmm. And it's very recently that it has done so. So I also think that sometimes we put a lot of importance on, you got to denounce your religion in order to be, really about, the liberation of African people, when really is that really 100% necessary prerequisite?
Well,
I mean,
let me interject a little bit. So let me just as far as the question of why not Islam, I feel like she does mention Islam, but I feel like the reason why she doesn't talk about it in depth is because her focus is on Europeans, like Western Europeans in particular. So she's more or less trying to. It's like an anthropological study of Western Europeans. So that's the only reason why she wouldn't talk about, I guess, Central Eurasians, right? The other thing about the question, I think that everybody's right in the sense that, you're not necessarily. Well, one thing is that you're not necessarily going to win at converting people. I think that conversion, or I think that what we can do as a people is support institutions that are more critical of these Abrahamic religions, or at least more grounded in the reality of our situation, as opposed to just letting foreign institutions have free reign in Africa, you know? And so that's really the gist of it. So, you know, like you're not going to, like for instance, now you might have in Africa, you know, people from China coming in and setting up Buddhist temples or whatever, right? And unchecked, you know, in 50 years, we'll probably be talking about how China has Africa has a Buddhist problem. So the reality is that what we want, I would think, as African nationalists, is to assume positions, influential positions, such to the point that we can, you know, have permits on where religious institutions, whether they're Chinese or European or whatever, where they can have their footholds and also have as a community our own institutions to, you know, cater to the needs of our people that are not being met otherwise. So I think it's not necessarily the case that we have to be aggressive against people and their, you know, misconceptions, but I also don't think it's the case that we have to be quiet about the nonsensical misconceptions that our people have. Because I would say this, that if, like I was having a conversation with someone yesterday, if you were to try to convince any of us that, like if I were to tell you guys, you know, yesterday I was, you know, I stayed up late because I was hanging out with a fire-breathing dragon, you know, you guys would obviously not believe me, you know? But that's because we've went through institutions and educational process where dragons are unbelievable. Once upon a time, dragons were believable. You know, if you said, "Oh, I saw a dragon in the woods," people would actually say, "Oh no, what is going on?" Right? So the thing is that we already have institutions that go against weird or strange or superstitious or unnatural or unhealthy beliefs. And we're already active against these kind of things. So if nothing else, what we would do is not necessarily attack people for, you know, not having a consciousness and you know, dismissing them for whatever. But we would not necessarily be quiet against what is otherwise, you know, imperialist agendas, and of course, you know, what is otherwise ridiculous stories, or even saying, look, do not turn your other cheek. If somebody slaps you, you slap them back. You know, so that's what I would say in regards to that. That it's not so much that we are that you have to. I mean, as I was speaking with someone yesterday. It's not so much that you want to. It's not so much that you're against the Christian, as much as you're against the Christianity that's making people choose to be docile, making people choose to be, you know, in brotherhood with people who are deceptive. And it's like you want to tell people, hey, look, these people are deceptive, because it's really something that if we do not counterweigh, that it's like it's very difficult to win. And I'll just give an example of a friend I have, close friend. You know, me and him, you know, kind of like as I went further and further into Black consciousness, you know, from high school on forward, you know, he was my heir, and notwithstanding that, he also had the church that he was actively going to. And eventually, you know, even though he couldn't reconcile the, you know, the stuff I was saying, which were, you know, white people are this, white people are that, he goes and marries a white woman out of the belief that she was a true Christian, you know? So it's really, and you know, he's always been resilient on, you know, condemning white people or whatever. And it's like, I understand you don't have to condemn white people, but the point being that this is something that, like, we have a culture, and this is something that's actively attacking our culture, or actively attacking our Asili, in order so that we don't embrace an Asili that would be a resistance against them. Because if nothing else, I've heard or even recorded that Marimbani says that, you know, culture is our immune system. And if this is something that's actively designed to attack the cultures of other people, which it is, and I think I had a friend, you know, once upon a time who was telling me about Islam. She said Islam legitimately does attack African culture. You know, it's against dancing, it's against this, it's against, you know, singing, it's against also, you know, it's against dressing, you know, whatever. In so much as there are things that are attacking our culture, we should in fact try to solidify our culture, because the reality being, and I mean, of course, you could attest to this, Cicely, better than I can, that, you know, our culture is being assaulted, you know, and our culture is being, our culture is fading.
Ultimately, sorry to interrupt, but ultimately this is a question of power, because how I feel like up to the moment we were not able to defend ourselves, Africa has been colonized. Because if you remember correctly, until the Gatling, the Gatling and the vaccine, the European couldn't like settle in on the continent. They were like constantly being rejected and evicted by kingdoms and empires. So we had the ability to defend ourselves. We had the ability to defend our culture. So the idea is always to oppose a resistance to their imperialistic behavior, and how we do that by demonstrating our power. And we have to propose. We have like to put something out in the world to say no. Basically, power is the ability to say no, and now we don't say no. Like there is like those Abrahamic religion, but in front of this, we don't have any value proposition to counteract those belief system. We don't have anything, and the idea is to come up with something to oppose this, like, but not just in words or just like without value idea. It's something that gotta be effective. Like you were speaking about like. Not believing in superstitious stuff and so on.
Oh, yeah.
But I was watching a video where you had a witch doctor operating on the brain in the 17th.
Yeah.
And we get it. We build all those systems. It's like people are saying, "Oh, I can see myself out. I can do out of body projection." Science knows that this stuff is real. Like you have a paper in PNAS or Nature, I don't recall, where a doctor is saying that a patient he operated, like an old man, they took out his denture and the nurse put it inside a cart, and she forgot about it. And when the patient woke up, he asked for his denture and nobody could find it. And then he said, "Oh, if this nurse knows where the denture is because she put them in the cart." And it was impossible because the guy was asleep at this moment. So we know those kind of stuff because you remember even Marimba Ali is saying this in the book, that science tries to explain everything, but it doesn't have like the ultimate answer for everything. So we know that science is limited, and those stuff start to re-emerge as soon as we speak about quantum physics and so on. So we have in our culture elements to oppose their culture. We just have to strengthen them and make them more powerful to have like a powerful value proposition.
Exactly. What we're gonna do is
world.
we're gonna try to move over, just so that we're not, here all day. But yeah, that's why ultimately, I wouldn't harass people right now. Like Sis was saying, you can like if you're working with people right now, you don't have to alienate them or anything. The purpose, I would say, is the ultimate goal is for us to have that power, so that we can in fact, pick and choose or even devise something that is better. Obviously, I'm partial to Kemet, and people who read my book can see I'm partial to Kemet. But other than that, let's move forward. I mean, like we're gonna do what we can. The next page, sorry, is 332. Cicely, what's going on with your mic though? I don't. It's like you're wrestling.
I was about to say something, so I took myself off mute.
I know, but what is that? It's like it's like I don't know what it is.
What does it sound like?
It just sounds like I don't know. Somebody else describe it, but like drumming. I don't know. Just
like drumming or like noise.
Yeah, just like
it's like noise or drumming.
Like a lot of noise.
It's a fan.
Oh, okay.
It's a fan.
Oh, okay.
It's hot as hell.
Okay, yeah. Oh, I see. Okay, I got you. Makes sense. All right. So anyway, we're gonna go to the next one, and hopefully we can integrate everything. But the thing is, I gave 7 minutes to the other one, and this was like way over 7 minutes. So all right, let's go. This is stage. What page did I say? You guys heard me. 332. So the confused liberal becomes the most dangerous European chauvinist of all. His wearing of two hats does more to maintain the European system than the work of those who are recognized as chauvinists. If a missionary sincerely believes that he has come to help Africans, then this can only be regarded as a dangerous form of delusion. The politically wise attitude of his victims would be to regard him exactly as they would any other would-be conqueror. Unfortunately for them, in the past, first world peoples who have understood the implications of European missionizing, whether of the secular or the religious variety, have expended great energy in an attempt to convince the missionary of the real cultural political effects of his work. This is a hopeless cause. Such efforts only involve them in an endless rhetorical abyss of European culture, instead of an active self-defense. The point here is that although the rhetorical ethic may sometimes represent instances of self-deception within European culture itself, this does not alter the fact of its function and effectiveness with regard to Western imperialism. The only way to help first world peoples is to accurately represent the nature of European culture and the motives of European behavior. The decision as to what changes are to be made in our culture are ours and must be initiated by us. Francis Welsing has said people of color have not understood where white people were coming from day one. Right now, black people keep assuming that what they feel about other people, white people also feel. Non-white people all over the world are baffled by how easily white people move into hypocrisy and deceit. We just have not been able to fathom it. If you are operating on one logic system and you encounter somebody who is coming from a completely different logic system, you may not be able to figure it out, especially if they are really fine in their methodology of deceit. Welsing's statements hits the marks. It helps to drive home the point that dishonesty, hypocrisy, and the moral lie are inherent in the functional to the cohesion of European derived culture. The normalcy of these behavioral characteristics sanction and defines the rhetorical nature of the Christian ethic, which is therefore not actually in conflict with dominant European Euro-American behavior. It is impossible to understand the behavior of the European until this is recognized, just as it is impossible to understand European behavior on the basis of the ethical dynamics of other cultures and other peoples. It is clear that this characteristic of the culture cannot be reduced to a traditional etymological distinction between ideal and actualized values. Such distinctions merely obstruct the underlying understanding of the nature of European culture. Listed below are the characteristics of the rhetorical ethic that distinguish it from anything that could be called a cultural ideal. And I think that's all I would read on that. I guess people say altruism, universal brotherhood, politically cunning, self-interested. Anybody? All right, so I'll just put on 7 minutes and we can discuss what I just read. It kind of ties into the other one, so. All right, go. Okay.
Yeah, in this case, she's introducing the concept of the rhetorical ethic, which means you say one thing and then you do something completely different. And I mean, I think this is where, we see a lot of wheel spinning in terms of the so-called political pundits in America and elsewhere. But it's like they are clueless in the process of just being caught up in some kind of ridiculous hamster wheel. But also one thing that I want to bring up again is this Akata, Obruni, Gringo, fork tongue, pale, what is it called, pale horse or whatever it is. All these different groups of indigenous peoples have described this cultural assembly in the same way, meaning that these people say one thing and they do another. This is a very ingrained understanding. If we are not lying to ourselves, we don't have to read Yurugu to know that from Africa to South America, everyone refers to these people in those same terms. And we all have words for it in all these different languages, and they all say the same thing. So we're familiar with the rhetorical ethic, but yet we remain in denial in our day-to-day practices. And this is the part where I feel like sometimes you're just making excuses because you know and you see. So whereas they have a rhetorical ethic that helps them to say one thing and do another, we by the same token, have something that allows us to see and don't see.
What I want
to sometimes
absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
And we're using Abrahamic religions as an excuse. This is nothing more than an excuse.
Because this is so true. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, let me finish. I'm done.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so what I would say is the thing I think it tied in with the conversation earlier about the only way to, she says, at the end of the page, the only way to help first world people is to accurately represent the nature of European culture and the motives of European behavior. The decision as to, and so I thought that was also, like, I think it ties into the conversation before of, what should we do? And Cicely's last point of, why even highlight the Abrahamic religion? I would say, what Mirvani just said, which is highlight the fact that the European is deceptive. Highlight the fact that they have motives here, that they're not here out of goodwill, despite what they're saying. There's I can't remember. It's a popular African saying, saying in Africa, following colonization, which was, the white man, showed up with nothing, except for a Bible. He gave us the Bible and told us to close our eyes and pray. And when we bow our head and pray, and when we turned up our head, he left with the resources, and we were left with the Bible. But it's like that in a sense is. I think the thing about it's almost like the European Christian is more harmful than the black Christian. Obviously, the black Christian, but the black Christian is kind of a casualty of the Europeans' Christianity. The missionizing. I would say, I do want to not focus on that, but I also, it's very difficult to say, like, if you're talking about like a true Christian, right? It's very difficult to separate the two, because I think one of the things that we do, or we tend to do, is that we tend to look at the Christian who is like radical, who's just like us, but they pray to whatever, right? As opposed to the broader scheme of things for Christians. There's this documentary in the Congo of this pastor who's recognized by the state, like the former president's wife shows up to him while he crowds a stadium of Africans, and he's selling a concoction that he wants people to drink to cure all sorts of illnesses, whether it be cancer, AIDS, dementia, whatever it is. He's selling a concoction. The concoction has in it lemonade and gasoline. So there are people in the Congo who are drinking gasoline out of a religious conviction, And obviously you don't want to say, hey, Christianity leads people to drinking gasoline, because that's not true. But, and you don't even want to say that it really has to do with Christianity, but what you notice is that this individual has this kind of legitimacy, this kind of authority, almost to the degree that, I'll say it this way, in America, a surgeon, you go under a surgeon can physically, I don't want to be too gruff or rough, but, it's a little sensitive, but they can molest a person who's under anesthesia, right? And the only reason why you would go to a surgeon is because they're certified, like you recognize their authority through the certification process that Europeans have set up for somebody to become a surgeon, And it's the same with a pastor or a reverend, The thing is that they're endowed this authority by this institution that really doesn't care for black people, And it's in that sense that, whereas I wouldn't necessarily connect Christianity with gasoline drinking as much as I wouldn't necessarily connect, surgery or surgeons with, molesters or whatever, or police officers with, child kidnappers. I wouldn't necessarily connect this stuff, but you can see how this authority, like you could see how there is this element that if you say, let's leave it alone, then what of this pastor? You know, what of this pastor right now selling gasoline to people and they're drinking gasoline while they're sick? What are we supposed to do? Like you know, just
Well, I
because.
mean, I'm all for pointing out, the hypocrisy. It's just that we have to account for the fact that the West is extremely secular at this point, and we're still hanging on to this other crap, and it's amazing that even though they dropped that bag, that they were holding, they dropped the bag, but it's almost like we're still holding on to it, but at the same time, they're still inflicting the same damage, if not more, without the Christianity bag.
Mm-hmm.
So we also have to account for that.
Because I think our Asili is so spiritual, deeply spiritual. We take any replacement. It doesn't have to be Christianity or Islam or Judaism. If somebody comes and say, "Oh, I have this special tree which could help you," because we're so deeply rooted still in our spirituality and we're still searching for it, I think we get tricked very quickly. And I think that's the deception in it, and that's why we are so found to Abrahamic religions, because it gives us or give black people such a hope. Yeah, because we tend to believe we cannot change our material situation, and the idea of being rich in heaven is something which is actually stupidity, but we accept this as the truth. Yeah, I think that this is attached to our Asili, and the question is, should we then change our Asili to a more Vazungu type, so we could defeat them? Could we use the tool of the master to destroy his house?
Yeah, and that's
I would say. I would say the contrary, because I believe in the sentence that you only destroy a system with an anti-system. Like, you don't destroy capitalism with more capitalism, but you destroy it with something, let's say, like communism and or anti-capitalism. And in the same vein, like, I deeply believe that yes, our city is spiritual, but we lost the notion of what is spirituality. Spirituality is about knowing, and there is an easy way to prove this is that it's the recognition that if you have everything in everything is contained within everything. So basically, if you want to know about the universe, you go inward, not outward, like trying to chase Mars colonization or whatever. So, but we are losing, or we lost all of this. So basically, it's to revive again this. And the sister Cecily said something also a few minutes ago. She said, like, the European are secular. I beg to differ, because like right now France is turning into fascism back by they just for instance legalize government spying. So basically, if the government think that you are an Islamist, or think you are trying to separate from the state, they can just hijack your phone and all your communication. And why? Because the state is afraid of what they call Islamo-Gauchism. So basically, there is, like in USA, this terrorist menace. They think it's everywhere. Plus here the Muslim population is higher, so they are like getting crazy about this and passing all sort of laws against this, limiting our belief. But if you go to the root of this is because they are Muslim. So it makes you realize that, okay, the state, again, it's rhetorical, because they say something, they do something else. Like, they say, oh, we are secular, and they pass all kind of laws to ban other religion. So no, they are not secular. So
all right.
they are still, yeah.
No, I feel you. I understand. I think that was interesting what you just said, because because earlier when you said capitalism being and like communism being antithetical to capitalism, I do remember a passage that I don't think I'm going to read it today, but I remember Ani says that it's not so much communism that threatened capitalism as much as terrorism, because terrorism was a lack of control. that couldn't be controlled as as much as communism was another system of control. It was more like it was like control was the anti-control. But we're gonna go to the next one. Just because we're running overtime and. But I mean that was a nice observation. I appreciate it. Let's go to the next one. So this is page 350, and we're gonna start off with the universe. So it goes the universe for the minority. Oh, and also I think I'm going to read about spirituality eventually. I don't know, but that was I like that you prefaced that. So let's go. The universe for the minority European is centered in the self. This is radically different from the world majority ontological systems. Is it any wonder then that the corresponding European concept of freedom would be lodged in the individual isolated self as well? This implies to the European that the individual has particular value in the culture. But when the culture is examined, it becomes clear that in the quest for an all-important self, much is sacrificed. Europeans are accustomed to viewing other cultures from the heights of invidious comparison to their own, in which traditional classical African and other majority cultures represent the depths of constraint and lack of respect for individuality. Yet the priorities of European ideology result in a kind of suppression of the human spirit unknown elsewhere. Among the Hopi, Lee found that every individual, young and old, is charged with responsibility for the welfare of the social union. This supports Diamond, who says that in traditional society, the average individual participates to a greater extent than does the ordinary individual in European society. The result of this is that the person he has a significance that she lacks in European culture. Her importance is qualitatively different. There is not simply a verbal commitment to valuing the individual. She means more to the group. Her value is given content. Again, what happens is that the asylee of the culture demands the creation of both conceptual and phenomenal experiential realities that will work to maintain its wholeness and consistency. Since the foundation of germinating seed of the culture puts in motion an insatiable power drive, conceptions and definitions must be created that facilitate the will to power. Power becomes defined experience as control over other. This in turn necessitates the splitting of self from other, as we have seen. What results is the concept of the individual, not divisible, the smallest unit of a social group. This atom of the universe is invented by the European as the seat of rational thought, the seat of moral action, the locus of power. Since power must be intensely narcissistic experience, is it any wonder that cooperation between such entities is problematical? Clearly, the concept of the individual is uniquely European, as it is resultant ideology of individualism and the economic system of capitalism that accompanies it. An individual can never truly experience the we-ness of things. An individual can never experience phenomenal reality as an extension of self, only as a negation of self. What is socially problematical is a communal impossibility. There is no counterpart to the European individual in African civilization. It is simply impractical. It does not suit the asylee of African culture and therefore does not exist, except as destructive evil. The concept of the person in African thought extends to encompass the entire universe. But then the objective is not personal control or power. The social objective is the experience of we. The African limitation is difficulty in defining the political they. The European political advantage is that every experience is defined politically based on the identification of the threatening other. The intense politicization begins with Indo-European or archaic European xenophobia, perhaps functioning to offset their minority status in the world. European culture creates a being who thrives on competition and therefore on individual and distinct achievement. Because there is not a natural regard for personal worth born from and supported by the culture, because a person's existence as a member of the group does not in itself mean much, the individual strives to be better than, to stand apart from others and his craving for recognition. This serves to reinforce his separate awareness and to further decrease his ability to identify with others. He, least of all, can define his goods or his goals in terms of universal harmony. It should be even clearer now that there is no supportive mechanism or precedent for an altruistic ethic or spirit of universal brotherhood. The only thing that binds members of the culture together in the final analysis, that binds them into a unified cultural whole, is the common goal of the suppression, exploitation, and control of the rest of the world. The environment, the earth, and its people, that which is other than the cultural self. It is a union of like-minded people who have cooperated in the creation of a technological giant or monster. So that's as far as I want to read. I want to start the timer. Anybody have any comments? Please comment. Okay, so what I would want to say.
I want to just go back a little bit on the secular piece.
Okay.
the issue between the Muslims and friends is not religious; it's cultural, and that's the same problem that we have in terms of Eurasians in general.
Mm-hmm.
So it's cultural; it's not religious. Islam doesn't neatly fit into the West little program. So therefore, yeah, it's going to be a conflict. And I, just based on my observation, in terms of the separation of church and state, I was just watching a documentary from the '60s, an American documentary, and it was a public school, and the Christianity was well in practice in the school. They were talking about Jesus and, just doing the whole thing, and that has completely changed. I mean, it was a complete sea change when America first came on the set and was like, let's separate church and state. So they've been on a bent for a long time, knowing that Christianity alone was not going to hold the fort. And she's going to get into this more when she starts talking about the Protestant Reformation. So I just wanted to, add that to the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. No. Okay. So what I was going to say is that.
Uh-huh.
All right. Never mind.
Go.
No. Never mind. Let's go.
No. I just wanted to say, yes, you're right. I forget what I was just about to say, but no, never mind. I forget.
Okay, so the thing I would say is that, yeah, I mean, I think that's what I'm saying. I feel like both of you are right, and that's how it is with us in general, is that, definitely we kind of always speak a truth, and it just depends on how you look at it. One thing that, so I would say, yes, it is definitely a culture clash, but also as well that Christianity
I agree.
is,
But in this case also, it's just I called it religion. But you have to know for the Muslim, the culture is the religion,
exactly.
and the politics the religion.
So that's what I'm saying.
That's why I phrased it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Essentially, the religion is the culture, and that's the thing that really gets to us too. So that was actually something that I thought was interesting in this passage, is that she's detailing what European culture creates. And so, while I was reading this, culture creates and begins to thrive on competition, blah blah blah. I'm thinking about the guy in who's selling gasoline to his own people in order to make money, make a lot of money and live a comfortable life, but he's literally killing his own people, or killing, African people. There's no real brotherhood, even though he's a reverend or a pastor. And this is the thing that, we constantly see when we adopt the European culture. And I think that's really why people may condemn Christianity, in the sense that it has within it a European culture, as well as it has, but it also has like a defense.
Individualistic.
Exactly. It has an individualism, because that's the thing with the Protestant ethic that Cicely was talking about earlier as well, is that, it has this individualistic ethic, but it also has this defense where you can like hide your hand. Kind of like if you guys are paying attention to the ADOS movement, ADOS might say, oh, this girl is, how are they going to get this immigrant? Or how are they going to get this non-African American to play Harriet Tubman? Or how are they going to get this non-African American, how are they going to get this British guy to play Fred Hampton, right? And then you say, hey, that has nothing to do with reparations. No, you say, hey, I don't like your movement because your movement is, trashing people from the diaspora. And then they say, oh, you don't like black people getting reparations? Like the thing is that like they have a defense. Like you could, what I don't know the term. I think it's a biblical term, so I don't know it. But it's like you can throw a rock and hide your hand.
You're right, bro. It's deceptive.
Yeah,
they've been deceptive.
And that's the thing. It's like you can do all sorts of things in like you can have this turning of the cheek. You can like for instance, it gives people pretext or context to not only be individualistic and compete and rule over. A lot of underlying things in Christianity is what I would say is that it really does. Like it really, like you can't objectively say there's nothing wrong with spreading European culture and I wanted to say that European culture, we have to realize, one thing we have to recognize, and this is, I think that we don't say enough, is that the European machine is a global failure. You know, like it failed in Europe, it failed in America, and it fails in Africa. So we're assuming a culture that's bound to fail. You know, and that's the reason why I have 7 passages, because I want to read a passage on that. Like for instance, the lack of love in this kind of culture, and that kind of stuff. So you have this, or the loneliness in this culture. It's something that it's bred into the culture, and so this is what's happening. So we're like Cicely is saying, you know, the European is actively doing this, notwithstanding the fact that they know that they embraced progressivism, scientificism, humanitarianism. They've left the Christian machine in order to say, oh no, we're really being progressive, we're being secular, but it's really the same thing. It's white power, and it's white culture that's destroying other cultures, because the truth is that the truth is this, that, and I want to say Christianity. Absolutely. I want to say that Christianity is in fact one of the aspects of white culture, and I want to say that if you did say, you know what, let's uplift our black people and let's uplift them, they'll be strong, and they'll be strong and Christian. The reality is that if you have a strong Christian church, if they're good Christians, they're going to proselytize and demonize and try to demean the cultures of other African groups. They're going to try to proselytize and demonize, or whatever, the culture of the Muslim. There's going to be conflict. There's going to, you cannot, because what happens is that the white, if you're a Christian, you should be doing missionary work. You should be proselytizing. You should be pushing your religion. You know, I remember an experience. I want to say, I don't want to hog the time, but I want to say that in high school, I had this experience where I was kind of I had this Pakistani friend, right, or Pakistani classmate, and we were talking, and at some point I kind of clown Islam, just, I don't know Islam much. I just, say something like, I don't believe blah, blah, blah. And then I say, why don't you tell me about it? And he's like, no. And he's like, he's kind of into black culture, in a sense, where he's like, a lot of black classmates, he wants to, he wanted to go away with saying the N-word, let's say, right? Anyway, but he's like, no, F off. I don't mean to curse, sorry. But he's like, no, F off. And he's like, oh, wait, no, I have to tell you about Islam if you ask, And so it's like they are being programmed to spread they're not being programmed to really truly respect other cultures. Now, I could say that Islam is not necessarily as hostile as Christianity, but of course I wouldn't necessarily say that, because you have, as they say, in Nigeria, you have Boko Haram, you have a lot of terrorism going on. Even France is having problems. So it's not like I could say that they're not. There are going to be groups that, you just can't get around it. I would say you want to, but the thing is that culture is, or religion is, the culture. It is a culture, and the only thing is that what makes Christianity and Islam different, and this is what Imam Mahani really emphasizes, the fact that they have outward conversion. So the Zulu do not convert you because the Zulu know that it's just their culture. You could get converted if you married into them or if you live among them, but they're not actively trying to turn other people into Zulu. The Igbo are not actively trying to turn other people into Igbo. The Twi are not, the Akan are not trying to actively turn other people into Akan. But the Christians and the Muslims are actively trying to convert other people. And this is where it's like we can't just look away. Sorry. But I hogged up the time, so if you guys want to say something, by all means. That was my fault.
Also, I think it's important for us to remember that we are not comparing apples to apples when we talk about Christianity and let's say the Zulu. I mean, because we never separated spirituality and religion from the rest of our lives. We've never done that. So sometimes I hear people throw out this, well, we need to get more into African spirituality. It's like, well, you could have stopped at get more into African, just period, at the end of that sentence. Because It's not about, something you do on Sunday. It's not about a practice you do a few times a week. It's about a lifestyle, and it's holistic. And so sometimes, you have to realize that this is part of the European Assyrian. They separate, they isolate, they bastardize, they concentrate, and they misappropriate, and they create a Frankenstein out of parts of things. And then those parts of things are concentrated and are more potent, deadly, and out of place than they would have been had they been as part of a whole package. So they've done the same thing with the religion.
You're right, Cicely. You're right.
Yeah, so,
You're right.
You're right.
Wait, hold on a second.
And you're just describing the reification process. That's exactly this.
Well, that's
you take
the thing
a part that you know you can control, and then you make it into an object and then you institutionalize and that's how.
I want to object, okay? I want to object, actually. Because that, I think, is also
it's good for the...
I want to say that's a part of the rhetorical ethic. That realistically speaking, we look at the Zulu spirituality as complete and holistic, and we look at the Christian spirituality as, oh no, it's just a part of this. But it actually is, I think, it is in fact completely holistic. But a part of the deception is that, oh no, it's not really completely holistic. But it is. And that's the thing that we have to recognize, that because my thing is that even before I read Yurugu, I was thinking to myself, like I was watching a video of what I think was like Igbo repatriates to, Igbo people in UK. They're having a debate about whatever, and I just wanted to see it, right? And I thought to myself, I don't think you can be an Igbo and Christian. Because when you say Igbo, you're thinking of an ethnic group, right? But if Igbo is a culture, if Igbo is a nationality, if Igbo is this, and then you leave your country, you leave your nation in order to go to England and live out your life, and you're a Christian, the reality is that you're not really Igbo anymore. You might be biologically, but Igbo was never a biological group. It was a philosophical group. And if you left your philosophical group to go to the Wazungu philosophical group, then no, you may have parents who were Igbo or ancestors who were Igbo, but you've left that. And I think that's the thing that we're not really, we don't want to admit. But when you go into Christianity, you kind of stop being an African. I mean, and you stop being, like, you're real racially an African, but like culturally, you stop being an African. And it has this individualism. Like I said, you read Genesis, you're suddenly, like, if you study Genesis, you're patriarchal. You believe that women came from a man's rib. Women are meant to serve men. You believe in the exploitation of the planet. You don't believe in the harmony of the universe. You believe that your deity created you to master everything around you.
And that's sorry to interrupt, and that's when I need you to clarify the stuff you say when you're saying Christianity is holistic. Because for me, it's not.
It's not. It's not. Christianity can never replace Mayat. It can never replace Ubuntu.
Exactly.
It can never replace Haloli. It can never replace the Dogon system because it's an incomplete system. It is a bastardized, centralized, focused, and separate piece that they broke off in order to use it as a weapon against the rest of the world.
No, okay.
Exactly.
I didn't really gonna say. I meant holistic in the sense of like you can't necessarily be the two. Like
the whole
it automatically conflict. Yeah.
Your whole existence, the whole of your existence, like whole area of one's life. In this sense, yes, I can agree, but like holistic, I don't think so.
No, not holistic. It's not a spirituality, but it kind of like an anti-spirituality. So but in being an anti-spirituality, it takes the place of, like, you cannot be like you can't practice Christianity and Igbo and so that's what I meant by like it doesn't leave any room for anything else. That's what I meant by, well, I was thinking you guys meant total, so I should have said total, but but yeah, it's just that's the issue. So it's like when we say, hey, you know what, there's nothing wrong with being a black Christian. It's like, okay, sure, we can say that, but at the end of the day, you know, if you're believing in like this patriarchal, if you're believing in this exploiting the earth, if you're believing in like we do not want
for
to.
a more concrete and actual example, you can take the example of the Caribbeans living in Europe. Basically, some of them will go there and make family and have kids and so on. So, but basically, the problems become that you have a community developing outside of the Caribbean, identifying as Caribbeans, and yet they don't have the same value. They are just like, so, sorry for if some of them are listening, but sometimes they are just like holiday people, like tourists, because they just take the physical appearance of Caribbean and will have like some European reflex, for instance, like something I hate, or like calling our elders like old people. We don't do this. This is like an insult. Like
I could confirm that. I could confirm that. We do not do that. Sorry to interrupt, but we do not do that, yo.
So you see, like it's impossible, or like cursing on your parents and stuff like this. It's allowed because they've been growing up amongst like French and British people, and for them it's kind of normal. It's edgy, but yeah, they can do this. It's just forbidden, and it illustrates what you're saying, that like you can be racially like Caribbean or African, but when you leave the land, when you leave the culture, are you still? I think there is an incompatibility there.
I mean, my thing is this: like we go to. I don't want to go too much on this, but like you go to the guy in the Congo, because this is really serious, right? You go to the guy, or but he's selling. Like I know I keep emphasizing it, but he's selling gasoline for people to drink, which is like so inhumane, so cruel, so like this can't help people, but you're selling it to them so that they can drink poison, and it's like this is not something that exists outside of a European mentality.
Some of us would say that this guy is alienated. And I came up with like, okay, yeah, I'm not a philosopher or whatever, but I came up with this new term that is reculturated. He's not alienated, because an alienated guy is like out of himself. He's living out of the culture. But reculturated for me helps you understand that, okay, you see a black guy, but he's not in your culture. And since you know which culture oppress you, which culture is against yours, if you have this friend that he's reculturated, you can see him as for what he is, basically. And this guy, he's just like a Christian individualistic bastard. So.
But I mean, and but
like the Ascari.
Exactly. That's why I would call them, right. But the people, I'm saying, the people embrace him. That's the issue. I mean, because it's like you would. Anyway, sorry. Let's go to the next one. Just quickly, because we don't want to be here all day. I didn't eat before, All right, page 358. I was like, I need to eat. These guys are going to be quick. No, I'm just. All right, page 358. The church. I don't know why we keep talking about the church. I know Cicely's not impressed. Hopefully, the next chapter is not going to have as much church. But anyway, the cultural role of the early church. So the discussion in chapter 2 deals only with the apostolic church, which for what has been the major problem of Western European history was its predominant form of religious statement. But the church, in its reformed model, in the form of Protestantism after the 16th century, related to the matrix of the culture in a way that was significantly different. A partial restatement here, and some of our earlier conclusions will help to elucidate this difference. The objective of the early Christian statement was not to be a normative statement of European personal or individual behavior. The European did not emulate Jesus, the Christ. Such behavior would have been, as it was for him, suicidal in the context of European culture. The Christian statement instead functioned to sanction European imperialistic expansion by giving moral status to the European concepts of universalism and evolutionism, progressivism. The church in this way performed a vital function in the creation of the Western European Empire. Because of this objective, its ethic was directed not towards the European, which would have been in direct contradiction to the imperialistic objective and to the Ultima Rojo, but to the cultural other, and did indeed complement the imperialistic objective. Most of the imagery, cosmology, and mythology of the Bible has ancient African origin and is easily recognizable as the product of other cultures. The maintenance of these aspects greatly facilitated the imperialistic objective, as it made the early Christian statement emotionally appealing and familiar to those whom the European wished to conquer. The first world peoples were offered images created out of a spiritual context with which they could identify. Catholicism absorbed just enough of the characteristic of the culture it invaded so as to ensure the loyal participation of its converts. It is the Catholic Church that represents the early Christian mission to complement the political mission of the West, that of empire building. It is the Catholic countries and communities in the celebration and rituals of African peoples reached the height of Bacchanal during the week preceding Ash Wednesday. It is the church in its early forms that has been the most tolerant of the majority world cultures, because the primary objective was political control of first world people and political control within Europe, not the moral guidance of Europeans. You know what? We don't actually. I think I just wanted to. I could just read that for, the listening audience. But I think we already kind of handled this church question, so it's not really too fundamental that we go over that one. Yeah, sorry. So I'm gonna go to the next one because I guess I should have cut that. I didn't realize everything was so much about Christianity. So we're gonna cut that one, and we're gonna just go to day 68. If that's fine with anybody else, or does somebody else want to comment on that one?
Yes, it's fine.
Yeah. All right.
Oh, it's okay.
Okay, so let's go to 368. And so, I mean, obviously this is Protestantism again, but, like I said, I was engaged in a pretty tough debate, so, All right, but no, it's actually not. I actually like this one. This one, I thought people had to hear this one, okay? And the other ones following. So the attempt to understand the cultural significance of Protestantism points to an important characteristic of European culture that can be easily misinterpreted. The Protestant ethic cannot be understood merely in terms of the nature and function of former religions in primary cultural settings. Like religious statements in primary cultures, it both provided and reinforced the culturally accepted behavior models and was in the sense of a statement of morality. But unlike more spiritualistic religious statements, it was in fact with the help of the Protestantism and capitalism that the final death blows to spiritual awareness were dealt to the Western European consciousness. Spirituality has never informed the direction of European development, nor the character of European culture. It is not contained in the Asili, but now it was thoroughly exercised. For the sake of clarity, we should reiterate what is meant by spirituality, rather than assuming its definition. We mean to imply a particular vision of a universal reality in which a given order underlies organic interrelationship of all beings within the resultant cosmos. This order, which is both perceived and is at the same time a matter of faith, is of a metaphysical essentialist nature. It is on this ultimate primordial level that meaning is derived, which then helps to explain material physical reality. Perhaps the most significant characteristic of this concept of spirituality is its transcendent nature. While one functions pragmatically within a profane reality, that reality is never thought to be the essence of meaning. In spiritual conceptions, there is always a striving for the experience of a deeper reality that joins all being. Learning is the movement from superficial difference to essential sameness, Naim Akbar. This sameness is spirit, beyond and ontologically prior to matter. It is the basis for human value. One's spirituality involves the attempt to live and structure one's life on a national, communal, and personal level in accordance with universal spiritual principles. It allows for the apprehension of spirit energy in matter form. Let's look at the example of contemporary European intracultural behavior, which perhaps concretely demonstrates what is meant by the lack of a spiritual base in the culture. In March and April of 1987, a controversial court case emerged in the headlines, and a newscast involves the custody of an infant who became known as Baby M. The case brought attention to a new practice called surrogate mothering, in which a woman leases her womb to a couple who cannot have a child. For a price, in this case, $10,000, she allows herself to be artificially inseminated with the man's sperm, carries the fetus for 9 months, and gives birth to a baby who then belongs to the man and his wife. In the case of Baby M, the person referred to as a surrogate mother who actually gave birth to the baby changed her mind and wanted to keep the baby, claiming that it was rightfully hers. A situation such as this is inconceivable from the perspective of a spiritualistic worldview. Everyone involved is reacting in a materialistic manner to a profoundly spiritual event, and they have to resolve it legally. The natural mother is called a surrogate because she has sold the rights to her body. she has contracted the function of her womb, something she spiritually cannot do, that could only be conceived of in the context of the European worldview, which objectifies all reality. The body womb of the natural mother is regarded as though it were a mechanical incubator on a hospital ward. Yet the body womb is inextricably and interdependently joined to a human spirit, soul, and emotional being. There may be no other phenomenon that affects a woman's emotional being more intensely than the act of carrying a child and giving birth. Only Europeans would attempt to void the birth process of its spiritual meaning and treat another human being as a womb and biological process only. In this instance, the most sacred occurrence in terms of the African worldview becomes a business deal in which not only a woman's womb but the baby to whom she gives birth is a commodity, the ultimate profanation. Spiritual depth and maturity is also lacking in the childless couple who, instead of adopting a child, must desacralize a sacred phenomenon by acting out their extreme and narcissistic egotism. Centuries earlier in European development, Protestantism was laying the groundwork for such an intensely non-spiritual approach to reality. Protestantism was practical, mechanical, and materialistic. It was in this sense secular, or profane in the sense of Mercia Iliad's distinction. As Mumford has indicated, its concern was the concrete European, city of man. Protestantism was about the business of aggressive life and material survival. Moral, personal conduct and behavior were prerequisites to civil order, but the essence of the human spirit was not the source of its morality. Rather, it was being destroyed by it. Protestantism was an emphasis on the Western conceived ego, how to destroy itself. My bad. I actually thought she was going to talk about the bathroom here. But, you know, when she... Alright, but anyway. But, alright, what do you guys think about that comment then? I thought it was the bathroom one, but... what do you guys think about that? Let me turn this thing. Or guys and gals, right?
Well, for me, is she explains how the system works only with rationalism. They only think rationally. They have oust spirituality, and they have commodified actually everything, not only humans but also the earth. Everything is a commodity, and now even sometimes you have they want to commodify every resource. Yeah, that's like the aim on this earth. Everything has to do with commodifies and everything, and it's very dangerous. To commodify like a kid, it's like a business for them. Everything is a business, and that's they are silly. It's based on materialism, on rationalism, and like the sister says in the book on scientism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I want to say I guess I stopped reading a little too early. Well, not really because she was going to talk. But eventually, on the next 2 pages or page 371, people at home could see if they pause the video, you know, later on, that, you know, she's talking about how when we potty train our children, you know, the way Europeans potty train their children is different from the way that Africans potty train their children, you know, and how Europeans, you know, just sit a kid inside of, you know, on a cold object, and, you know, they can't join the group until they cleanse, whereas the African mother, she would kind of sense the child's need to use the bathroom, and then not even separate him, but, well, it's something I wouldn't do really, but he would be able to sit on her, like sit between her legs, and, you know, let the excrete fall to the ground, which is a little too close for comfort for me. I'm just joking, but I mean, it kind of speaks also to just the difference of culture, but because especially when we consider that, you know, as Wazungu spreads, you know, these customs that we held and had are lost. You know, they're lost to time. You know, white people or European culture is what we've noticed. You know, destroy different animals are going extinct and endangered every day. The planet itself is suffering, but it's also the Native Americans were wiped out. The Australians were wiped out. A lot of our ancestors were wiped out. You know, I mean, obviously our ancestors were the ones who survived, but a lot of our ancestral family was wiped out. And a lot of what we had and would have retained otherwise are gone. I want to say that I was having a conversation, and you know, someone you know said, hey, you know, I haven't noticed a sun, you know, a sun day or like a certain spiritual system that you might find in ancient Kemet in another part of Africa, and it's like, well, it should be there, it would be there, You know, if we understand the history of Africa, but if we also understand how white folk wiped out 2/3 of the population, right? Some of that population that was wiped out were carrying the culture. We're carrying the complete and total image of the spiritual system, you know? And because of that, you know, like this is the thing that I feel that we have to actively oppose. And that is, we have to actively oppose the fact that we have a culture of our own, and our culture is something that, like, it's our defense, but it's also something that's helpful to us, and it's healthier and it's better than what white people have to offer. And as much as I want to, you know, because one of the things that you have to separate the Christian from the Christianity. You can't, you don't want to, but you have to also understand that if if anybody's bringing European culture, and I'm not saying European culture we have to absolutely dismiss, because, you know, I can't say that and be on, you know, on their technological, you know, I can't do that. But, you know, we have to say to ourselves, what is the value here? What is the good here? What can we take? This is a little bit of a tangent, but I want to say that, you know, there's this Nearly Fuller Jr. speech where he's like, it's a weird speech, but he's like, you know, when it comes to, you know, homosexuality, he's like, you should put them on stage and I tell them to do what they're doing and say, how does this benefit us? Like, how does you doing this benefit us? Now, I think that's a little weird, but at the same time, this is, like, he's kind of saying, you have to be critical of what it is that is being offered you, and really explore it to its full capacity. Are we supposed to be, you know, are we supposed to be potty training kids on toilets, or are we supposed to be, you know, like really bonding with them? Are we supposed to be distancing ourselves from our own children, developing all sorts of pathologies, or are we supposed to be close to them and have them, you know, feeling that kind of warmth and that closeness? Like, that's really the question. Sorry, but anybody else comment on that or anything?
I think she, Dr. Arnie is using some of the best examples that can be used to illustrate the differences. And the only thing I would like to emphasize is that those African cultural practices are pretty. They run from the north to the south of Africa to this day. In most cases, I mean, obviously we've lost contact with some of our culture, because even though we've embraced Islam and Christianity, they don't wholly replace our cultures. Even here, people who practice these religions, you can still see the cultural conflicts that come into play when it's the culture versus the religion, and the culture wins in a lot of cases, I have to say, in my observation. So, but I like to emphasize that point, that yeah, this is something that it's just different, you know. And I like to say, you know, that it's a difference between us Africans and Asians, and we have to know that. Even with all of the Abrahamic stuff going on, there's still differences. I remember telling my daughter, and this is, you know, it's graphic, but, you know, when a child in America is born under duress, and it is not something you can even change by having a home birth in a bathtub, okay? It's under duress and it's under stress. If they're born in a hospital, it's even more so. And you can clearly see that. You know, they used to even smack the babies when they were born to make them scream. Then the boys, they tie them down to this thing and they cut part of their penis out with no anesthesia or anything. And then if they're Jewish, then they do that in the church, and then somebody literally sucks the blood out with their mouth. Yeah. And I'm telling my kids, hey, it's all downhill after that experience. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, here we clearly see that the socialization into the European assembly is it meets you before you meet yourself.
and I want to say this because I know that two of the brothers are Caribbean. Well, I guess three of us kind of have a Caribbean background. I mean, I'm in America, so I would say that. And I know Cicely is a little older than me at least. But I would say I want to ask Cicely this though. Like when you were younger, did you hear about Bruh Rabbit or did you hear stories of Bruh Rabbit?
Yeah, Brer Rabbit, signifying monkey.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the thing right there. So when I was younger, I did not hear. So my generation, as far as I know, did not hear much about. Cause so the Caribbean version, I mean the Jamaican version of Bruh Rabbit, every different just like in Africa, how there's different cultural expressions, even though we were all stolen from pretty much similar areas or kind of melded together from different similar areas, we kind of developed our own culture. So, in America they have Bruh Rabbit, and in Jamaica we have Anansi, right? So, and then, Haiti has their own one, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But the thing that I thought was interesting is that my mother heard Anansi stories growing up, but she did not pass it on. So I didn't hear Anansi stories because I had a television, So because I wanted to say this in the context of, even though, you say, hey, the culture usually wins against the religion. I feel that it gradually, I feel like it gradually loses ground, and I think this is something that even among one thing that they noticed that people notice about immigrants, whether they're African, European, or even Asian, like Chinese immigrants, whatever, is that after 3 generations in America, they no longer for instance, for Chinese people, the Asians, some certain Asian groups, not all Asian groups obviously, but certain Asian groups from strong Asian countries, or strong competitive Asian countries, when they come to America, the first generation excels white folk, the same way that Nigerians would excel white folk, right? But by the 3rd generation, they're behind white folk. As to say that the acculturation process is not immediate, but eventually it white people know how to destroy your culture, or know how to destroy your way, and know how to assimilate you to the point where you become almost an inferior version of them. And I think that whereas, I do agree, yes, we do have cultural retention, it is slowly waning without, conscious efforts or real institutions for us to not have have it wane. And just the same way that, sorry. Or even I could say that, just to say that, in 1900, like Sister Cicely was saying, in 1900, most of Africa was, traditional. Had a traditional spiritual system. In 2021, spiritual systems are gone. Well, not gone, but it's
but again,
they're integrated, but they're losing.
Power dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
It's back to power dynamics.
Exactly.
But because look in the example of your mother and the Anansi story. So you see, you didn't learn about Anansi. Why? Because you were in front of the TV. Our reaction should have been to produce the Anansi story in a television format, like anime or something like this. You see, we always, it's like, okay, I'm listening a little bit to Jay-Z. He speaks about the concept of the red queen's race. You know it? You always have to run faster to stay in the same place. So basically this, if we don't produce, I don't like this term, but if we don't have something to say in the march of the world, we'd be left behind.
Mm-hmm. And I want to actually emphasize this too, that that's the thing that I like about Africa. That, for instance, since she's in Ghana, they would put Obadale Kambone on TV, or in Kenya they have programs that speak towards different things that might be unique or to Kenya. The thing with America that I find difficult is that even though you can have public access TV, which I had or whatever, I had a channel on that once upon a time, but there's a huge I feel there's a huge block on how much access we have to television. Only recently did we as I would say African Americans, were able to like really be on television like that or have our own say our own voice, and it's a really costly thing as opposed to in Africa where it is costly, but they have the institutions.
Even in the sorry.
You said even in the Caribbean. Yeah, I mean it's expensive.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean only if like you said, if power like usually things go along the lines of what the local power wants, and if the local power like the local power in China is not going to have pro Japanese programs too much. You know what I mean? Like it's like if they don't want to, and so America is like not America is really hostile to African Americans. Like it's weird, but they're so hostile that it's just we couldn't have it here. Now maybe we could have it in Caribbean, but you'd have to probably be rich. Maybe we could have it in Africa, and you probably have to be connected to government. But that's the difference, though. It's like you can.
We have to acknowledge that the landscape is changing. Like the situation and what you are describing refers to the 90s where everything was still centralized. You still had gatekeepers on every level of everything. Basically, the way information and information distribution was structured, you couldn't get wrong. You wanted to get to TV, you wanted to get, let's say, a 25-minute spot, you had to pay like 200 millions. We don't have such amount of capital, and that was the main problem. Nowadays, with internet, the fact that everything is distributed, like you don't have like centralized entities anymore. Everything is like small communities. You go on YouTube, you follow your favorite YouTubers. It gives us a window of opportunity to actually produce, and actually that's what you are saying, and I feel that's the reason why more and more people are speaking about Pan-Africanism, and that's why we see like stuff like BLM and so on. So before I would say it was more difficult, but now we have our opportunity. And it's up to us to transform this essay.
I was just telling you. Most of the reason why I brought up that the old days was because you were like, why wasn't this guy watching Anansi? Why was the guy watching Tom and Jerry instead of Nancy? And it was like, well, I mean, my mama ain't having no millions of dollars. Like she could have done it. But I do want to say that I mean, before anybody realizes that Bro Rabbit, I mean, because I did say Tom and Jerry, so people might say, well, what about Bugs Bunny? And the relationship Bro Rabbit. So there was this kind of relationship to that. And I think Disney also had a Bro Rabbit thing. I do want to say, on that note though, for people at home, I would say get yourself a subscription of Quelly TV as well as other sort of programs like that. I don't actually personally watch it too much, because for whatever reason. But, they are like a African type Netflix. And there's like another one that I can't remember off the top of my head, but there are these subscription platforms that you can use. You don't even have to watch it. They're cheap, and they're allowing the propagation of more African content. So that's something that if we want to, just spend some money. Like,
you have the app Afroland.
Oh yeah, Afroland. That's another one. That's one. Yeah. So just like just get yourself a subscription. You don't even gotta watch it. You might be like, hey, I don't have money to burn. Yeah, you do. You know what I mean? like you do. So I mean, if you're in the West, you do got money to burn. So just burn it. It's not burning. You're investing in your people, because that's something that white people do. I remember Ani doesn't mention it that much, I guess, but they do. They really do invest in their own people. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go to the next one. We're on page 379. For you guys, people at home can see. 379, and we're going to start off with Sagan is correct. So Sagan is correct. There is a basic conflict, but the conflict issues from the extreme individualistic and materialistic worldview of the culture. These terms are so strong that they act in opposition to the needs even of a European social order, of a European consciousness. That is the only conflict within the European asili, individual consciousness versus European consciousness. It is difficult for Europeans to treat other Europeans non-aggressively. That is the source of moral behavioral tension. The super ego, to borrow Freud's term of the culture, then instructs the members to direct unacceptable violent aggression towards non-cultural beings outside the culture, communists, gooks, N-words, etc. On this level, the conflict is resolved. Such violence, like the movies, is not experienced as violence, nor is the violence that is directed at Africans in America. Sagan is a victim of the rhetorical ethic. His explanation gives this ethic a function that it does not have. It blurs his vision so that he can say of the United States, we have an ideal of love, a moral vision. But we who have been victimized know this is to be a lie. The Western ethic is the epitome of selfishness. Contrary to the verbal expression of the rhetorical ethic, it is not considered immoral in the West to act in one's own interest at the expense of the well-being of others. Rather, selfishness, competitiveness, exploitation of others are necessary for survival, dictated by the ideology of the culture, indicating, therefore, moral, acceptable, encouraged behavior patterns. These characteristics represent moral behavior in the context of European, Euro-American culture, in that they are sanctioned by every aspect of the culture. An individual within it is conditioned to manifest them. The successful culture bearer of Europe, as Weber puts it, possesses these characteristics. The truly Western man is the most competitive and aggressive person, while the least successful person in the culture, who is in no way determines what the West becomes, is characterized by humility and love, i.e. identification with and consequent respect for those around her, resulting in non-aggressiveness, internal peace. This person is trampled upon in and by European culture. She is considered worthless. What is more, she is unethical, and that she attempts to defy the normative behavior sanctioned by the culture as a whole. A person such as this must possess a radically different conception of self than that which European ideology proffers, and that which the members of the culture are inculcated. Is it then any wonder that such a person is rare in European divided societies? For as Cavell says, culture is organized into sets of symbols which are congruent with the structure of the personality within it. The personality described by the early Christian or rhetorical ethical statement is indeed incongruent with European culture. That person contradicts the Asili and contradicts from a different and contradicts the Asili and functions from a different ultima rojo. Can such a person exist? Let me see if anything else afterward. Let me see. A self distinct. Oh yeah, maybe this is a self that must be distinct in order to know becomes emotionally a self that perceives value in terms of its isolation. This is not the natural context for the creation of human value, which is normally created out of a shared emotional commitment. The values of the European individual are therefore necessarily material. They are not true human values, such as self is alone, afraid, defensive, and aggressive. Acquisitiveness, fanatical accumulation, and mutual exploitation are merely the logical and rational outgrowths of such a perception of reality, clearly the conception of self. The values of a European divine individuality and freedom that the culture generates, the personality strives for a security not provided by his culture, an arena from which it can never come. Material accumulation becomes the tool of an assurance against the hostilities and attacks of others. The individual becomes obsessed with the negative and threatening possibilities of the future, with accidents and his death, with death. He lives in a culture diseased with the thanatophobia, and one that provides him with insurance against every kind of physical and material possibility imaginable. Yet, knowing that no amount of financial gain can redeem his soul, he is truly Faustian man, but he did not choose to be so. The choice is already implicit in the asili of the culture, the biocultural ideological core. I think she talks about loneliness here, does she? Let me see. I don't want to read too much, but all right. So let's see. I don't know. Okay, okay, yeah, sure. All right, let's just keep going. Sorry. European culture then falls in the primary function of a cultural construct to provide the human being with the emotional security brought by spiritual communion. This sense of security within the European fails to achieve in majority cultures is created out of the spirituality of human interrelatedness and a concept of shared human value, an arena that transcends the material. European culture is a culture with a non-spiritual ideological base. This essential and defining characteristic has allowed it to become the most materially successful culture, the most aggressively political culture, the most scientifically rational culture, and the most psychopathologically culture the world has ever known. It is at the same time the only culture that provides little or no source of spiritual or emotional well-being for its members. It carries little tradition of insight into the human spirit and virtually no knowledge of the human soul. It is atrophied towards non-human realities. European culture presents the individual it produces with only the alternative of materialism, scientism, and rationalism when what she needs is the inner peace that comes with communion, merging with others, the sense of oneness and emotional identification with other people. What she needs is love. As Koval says, the current state of our culture is inadequate to meet the full human need of its people. Using the concept suggested by Alexis Kagame and interpreted by John Heinz John, European culture as an oppressive kuntu structured modality destroys the muntu-ness, human beingness, of its participants because it's based on the valoration of kintu, material objects. The characteristics we have discussed are basically those that determine European interpersonal behavior. The institutions and forms of culture can be understood as a structured set of rules that are based on these given norms that act to regulate the behavior of individuals so that a support system for its intercultural behavior is maintained. In other words, what accounts for the survival of the culture as a cohesive whole is the ideological objective of the control and subjugation of all other peoples and the related commitment to technological and material superiority. A friend of mine points out that Europeans would indeed destroy each other if they did not have others to destroy. By the same token, the integrative function of the culture could not have survived so long the disintegrative tendencies of an individualistic ethic had it not been for the outwardly directed imperialistic objective in the quest for world supremacy. The quest is definitive to the European ultima rojo, and its emotional satisfaction is self-negation of spirit, which members of European culture identify. Because of the spiritual void in European culture and its ideological individualism, capitalism was able to gain hold and to flourish. In turn, it supported these themes and because of the success of capitalism in the West, the concept of individual freedom and possession was reinforced, while any attempt to discover human spirituality was discouraged. The essence of human spirit is inseparable from communalism. The ethos of capitalism presupposes and thrives on moral individualism and autonomy, the denial of human spirituality. The themes that I have been pointing to recur in other descriptions of European culture, not only in the more critical analysis, but they are also recognizable in the non-critical chauvinistic description. The juxtaposition of the analysis of Joe Colville and Robert Williams helps to demonstrate how similar traits of Western society are made to appear both from a critical and non-critical perspective. From the perspective of critical understanding of the European concept of self, it is possible to understand better the ideology of individualism and the related assumed value of human freedom as it is interpreted in European culture. The ideals of democracy, a byword of American nationalism, is seen as a translation of the European concept of self into a particular European statement of value instead of a universally valid human goal. Robert Williams' description of the theme of value of democracy is couched in terms that attempt to clout the issue of its uniqueness to the culture, but even in these terms, it is clear that the values expressed do not have universal significance. In fact, Western democracy is necessary to assuage the fear and distrust that individuals have of each other. Okay. Wow, okay. All right, anybody have any comments on that? You guys there?
This is crystal clear. Crystal clear. The sister describes it to the core. To the core.
My thing is this. I know because my thing. All right. So one thing I want to say because somebody wasn't sure. I had a comment that people weren't sure if she was quoting white people or not. I tend to not quote the white people online, so I'm sorry, but she actually quotes a lot of white people. So eventually, if you guys see, she talks about democracy later. And then her description of democracy was also something that I want to also highlight. Well, she says democracy is envisioned as a system that guarantees the freedom of the individual. Like how democracy fits into the individualism that Europeans promote. And I thought that was also an interesting thing that I would talk about if I were, but I don't really, like I don't know, I should really read the white guy in between, but whatever. Either way, I thought this was, like you guys said, it's really crystal clear, it's really excellent, it's really functional, and I want to say that one thing that I did before is that I don't want to make it so that we're focusing on Christianity because it's not really Christianity. It's really, I would say Eurasianism, but it's Europeans in that sense. It's Europeans or Eurasians, and it's everything about them. You know, it's everything about them. So even their democracy, which is something that I also would get in trouble for if I was like, you know, because there's like radicals. There are people who are way more active than me on the continent, obviously, or more active on me, you know, in general, who are, you know, promoting democracy in Africa, and they think they're doing the right thing, and it's like, but do we want to adopt democracy? And you know, is democracy really the system that we want? And I think that, you know, I didn't read it here. People can, you know, when they're at home after the live, they can pause it, they can read it, you know, they can read this one paragraph, unless you guys don't mind me reading it, but they can read this paragraph and say, yeah, there's something fundamentally European about this Greek system. Like one of the critiques I had in the debate, I want to say, because we had like a huge religious debate, was that one of like we as a people do not want our own institutions. We want the religion from Rome. We want the economic system from Germany. We want the scientific socialism from Germany. We want the religion from Rome, Christianity. We want the political system from Greece, democracy, and it just goes down the list. Like what is it of our own that we want?
True.
And that's like what. So I don't want to focus on Christianity. I don't think that's necessary. But I do want us to know that yes, the European. Actually, I think one of the people I quote was Dessalines. Dessalines said, "Look, it's not so much that we lost against the French, because of their warfare, but we lost because of their eloquent words. Like he recognizes in 1800, 17, I don't remember, 1801, right? Yeah, but he recognizes in the early 18th or the late 18th century that the French came with rhetoric, that they came with sweet words, and they came with these systems that we as African people have not yet demolished, have not yet destroyed. Now, obviously, you wanna do it slowly. You don't want to, you want to say, look, you got 10 churches on this block, make it one. You know what I mean? If anything, and whatever, right? If anything, but now maybe not. But the point is that you have to address the fact that their culture is there. That I fully expect. Like, for instance, if I want to go to an African, because we were talking about there earlier, the cities. If I want to go to a city in Africa, I know I'm not gonna feel that. Like, I know I'm going to recognize things. Even though I'm going to a whole different part of the world, I know I'm going to recognize things because I know that, as remember Ani outlined in the other chapter, that white people went around the world and made things so that it's comfortable for them. And then we as westernized Africans, or me at least, I'm a westernized African, I'm going to see the same damn comfort. Obviously, I don't mind certain things. I don't mind sitting on the toilet, you know what I mean? But but this individualism, this loneliness, this destruction, this obsession, this so on and so forth. I think that's something that we have to address. I also want to say just quickly, because somebody was asking me, does she address the monks? The exceptions. The exception, like the Christianity exceptions in a sense. Like the monks and so on and so forth. And I would say, there's a bigger emphasis on she says Saint Aquinas and so on and so forth. But even this part where she says fanatical accumulation, acquisitiveness, isolation, self-alone, I feel like that talks to that. Sorry.
I would say also she does talk about the fact that when we she talked about generalizations, and she said, yeah, so we will generalize. Do you guys remember that part? I don't know what page it's on, but
yeah.
So she was saying that in response to the people who will say, what about the good examples? She's like, and we're not talking about individuals who defied, the very few individuals who defied European culture or civility. We're talking about what that culture has produced on the earth, and it is general. So I don't remember the page, but she did say that.
Exactly. And I think in the passages that I read earlier, she did emphasize that if you do act like Jesus, like there are some white people who are going to fool themselves and try to act like Jesus and get themselves killed. You know what I mean? Like you can do that, but it's just not. But it's suicidal. In this particular culture, like in every culture, there are values and there are things that are rewarded and there are things that are punished. And for instance, like if you're a white person, like all of us know this term. Well, all of us in America will know this term, N-word lover, right? that is, if you were advocating for
like John Brown.
well, yeah, John Brown, or the guy who was, or like, there's a few examples of people during the civil rights movement, like white people in the civil rights movement who were lynched right next to black folk because whatever, or even to this day, if you like even 10 years ago, if you were a white person and you saw a black person get like murdered in cold blood in the streets or whatever, and you reported that to the police, like the white community would collectively harass you, and this was like 10 years ago. It's probably the same today, to be honest. Like, if you were to be on the jury who let Trayvon Martin's killer, George Zimmerman, die, right? I mean, sorry, let him go to prison, you would be harassed as a people. The reason why people were watching the George Floyd, and the Chauvin, you got the fan on again, Cicely. But the reason why people were watching the Chauvin case was because they did not expect like a white juror to convict a white person, because there are social consequences. There usually are social consequences for breaking the values of the community. But it just so happened that today, or not today, but it just so happened that for this particular case, it was like the white values were kind of aligned with, this guy was excessive, and because he was excessive. But usually, and the guy Chauvin, apparently he's done this to multiple people. Like, apparently he did it to a child, like a 14-year-old boy, for longer. You know what I mean? like 14 minutes. So it's just a matter of I don't know the details. Don't quote me on that. But the point is that there is white people get like they have values. So yes, there are people who go against the values. There are some people who do other things. There are people who there are going to be white people who go and try to adopt black cultures, like legit, literally. And some of them just want it for their own gain, to get their attention from women or whatever, or men or whatever. But there are some people who might just whatever. But it's exceptions don't make the rule, and that's really that's how I would like reinforce that point of, yeah, we know that you're generalizing, and we know, but also I want, and I told her I told somebody this as well, that white people say the same thing that Mirabani is fundamentally saying here. They say, there's a quote that goes in like European philosophy that all philosophy is a footnote to Plato. And so what Miranda Ani is doing is exactly that. She's showing you what Plato said, and she's showing how the implications of Platonic thought are going throughout European cultural thought as well. And that right there is it's like consistent. It's how you would look at the situation.
Don't you love how the European Asili helps them to gravitate to the ideas that bring them the most power? Whereas some of us, we could just go back and forth on the most, irrelevant topics. And, at the end, sometimes it's like, how is this going to help us, though? How is this going to help us to engage the power that's trying to oppress us and keep us from living to our potential? So sometimes we get caught up on some of the most irrelevant and things. But if you notice throughout history, they have been consistent with this. When it works, they use it. When they're finished with it, they throw it away. As they're in the process, I think, of throwing Christianity away. They've drained it of everything that they can use it for. They'll take with them the few things that they can still use, and they'll leave the rest, and they'll come up with another way to continue and increase their power.
You're so right. It's the same thing with environmentalism. They know it's an attack on all of us, on every human being on this earth, and then they make it like something, it's brotherly. Yeah, it's universal. Yeah, we all have to stick together. But immediately, if they get a way to change this ecosystem to fit their needs, they will totally forget about the rest. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
So I'm sure they had conflicts with Plato, and Plato himself had conflicts at the time. It wasn't like people just wholesale gravitated to Plato in his lifetime. But over time, as they examine it, and as they examine things, they just pick whichever one brings them the most power, the quickest way, and that's part of their program.
Yeah,
And we're here flailing. We're flailing. We're arguing about Pan Africanism. What is it to argue about unity, for Christ's sake? But we do it. It's just beyond me.
I want to say there's two things. I mean, I agree with you, fundamentally. I think that the real emphasis I want to say is that the problem with us and the separation between us and them in real sense is that we kind of do not have leadership anymore. And I think that I want to say that that's probably the thing that they really robbed us of, because
Yes.
I want to say that, if we were born on the continent and we weren't, victims of this genocide or whatever, a lot of us, even like people listening or people speaking or whatever, we probably would have been leaders in our community at one point. But instead of being leaders in our community, we are kind of just subject to the lower classes of these communities. And so, and so whereas we would have been able to have an impact, impose, well, not impose, but, share our vision, and that vision being worked on collectively together, that doesn't happen, particularly, and this is why I also want to say, particularly because a lot of the people who do elevate, somehow or another, tend to always emphasize, remaining in the Western world. And because they're remaining in the Western world, it's like there's like a glass ceiling, not to use the term that's the white feminists use for the women, but it's like a glass a glass ceiling for in terms of leadership, and to the point where I could have all the great ideas in the world, but I'm not going to be able to impose to really activate them in the West because it's another person's nation. Whereas, but if my consciousness, and I could say that as a black national, as somebody who was studying the black nationalism, my consciousness was almost entirely focused on trying to, for instance, I would go to the the hood here, and I would try to organize day in, weekly at least, and it's just a glass ceiling, it was not really going to succeed, but I could technically if I didn't wake up to that, I would have been trying that for 20 years, and then I would have given up, or I would have given up sooner, or whatever. But the point is that, a lot of times you would for instance, when I was engaging people who would walk by me, passerbys or whatever, I would say I want to do this, and you would have people who would say, I tried that, it's not going to work, and I gave up. I'm not even trying anymore. I'm just going to focus on me, blah blah blah, and living in this Western society, and it's that's what's going to happen to pretty much everybody in the West. It's almost inevitable. And when I heard that, I was like, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that. You just gave up. You're a coward. Blah blah blah. But the reality is that you want people to get the message of what, repatriate, and it's going to be difficult in Africa. Don't fool yourself. But at least the glass ceiling is not really there. Or it's higher or whatever. But it's probably not there. Or it doesn't have to be there. Sorry, you were going to say something? Someone else was going to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to add to put some sun on the future, some sunlight. It's not going to be like this because actually, I don't know if we should or get into the metaphysical, but I don't know the English for it, but I guess it's the same. It's egregor. Do you know this word?
No, yeah, I know that word.
Egregor, damn. It's basically a spirit that is created.
Like the Peter Tosh song.
Wait, it's the same in English. It's let me read. It's an occult concept representing a distinct, non-physical entity that arises from a collective group of people. Historically, the concept referred to angelic beings or watchers and the specific rituals and practices associated with them, namely within Enochian traditions. So basically, it's a kind of like, we could say that Jesus Christ is an egregor, like in the way it encapsulates the European culture and is a force for the European culture to advance. So the second part I want to highlight is that this egregor is nourishing itself with energy. So basically, that's why all the wars are on oil and energy, because European culture, to advance materially, has to have a lot of energy. And I'm speaking about this because it's the same energy they use to give you a little crumb for you to shut up. They give you like some comfort for you to say, oh, I'm not going back to Africa. They give you some money, so, a roof, even if it's not the best, to say, oh, at least I have that. I don't have to struggle with like malnutrition in Africa. Okay. But when you look toward the future, you see China is rising. So China is using more energy. The oil production is going down. So basically, that means the energy they are using is getting lower and lower. So they won't have this much to give to people. And I think we are already seeing this with all the social unrest. It's because of this, because like you saw the 2008 crisis, you saw the 2015 crisis, you see the fuck up that is the corona crisis handling. It's getting worse and worse. So basically, our community will get more and more uncomfortable, and probably it would help us to organize better, because if you have more and more people aware of their situation, they will want to change this, and that's how you will like convince them more easily. And for me, it's like a good outlook on the future, in the sense that more people will become aware, and since they can repatriate to Africa and basically live a normal life, eventually probably that's the most likely scenario. Like people will, because of discomfort in the West, they will choose to go to Africa.
I want to say this. I want to say this. Unfortunately, the what's brewing in Africa with is likely going to be a lot of warfare, a lot of child warfare.
It is already because like the French are trying to destabilize. You see they killed the Chadian president like last week, and they have this active force that is called Barkhane, operating in the Sahel region. It's just under the desert. It's the area between the desert and the Sahara.
And that's another thing too. It's like if you have
and even African for the U.S. part.
Yeah,
so
exactly. So
it is already. You were talking also about Boko Haram and so on.
Yeah,
for me, it never changed basically.
Yeah,
it's always
that's what
like
I'm saying.
Those,
it's going to be hard, and the West is going to. And like the West is still going to have its appeal, because you're not going to they're going to probably send soldiers. Like if you have unrest here in America, if you feel like you're not feeling too good, they're going to offer you a better life by going to war in another country, and they might set you up to die in that other country. They might set you up to so on and so forth.
I'm not sure because when you look at it, war is very costly. And it is not said that they will win. So because now it's not the world has shifted again, because it used to be a unipolar world. Basically, it was U.S., the West, and nothing else. Now you have like China again. You have India. You have Russia. So the world is multipolar. So basically, I don't think they will make such bold move. That's why you see them going hard on robotics.
Only thing I can say to that is this. That Malcolm X said the same. Malcolm X said, hey, look, the white man ain't win a war since Vietnam, or he won't win another war after Vietnam. And of course, white people America does not win a war after Vietnam, if you want to technically, well, not technical, but the point is that since Vietnam, they've been at war, they've always been at war. So it's not, like war is a instrument of a nation to have the hostile aggression, the social unrest, have those people outside of the country. You know what I mean? Because if you have a professional like this is something that was normal even before the West was a thing. Like even in older African empires, you wouldn't have soldiers. Bitter Medicine, he's another podcaster, and he was talking about how there was African kingdoms where if the soldiers went to a campaign on the other side of the planet, the king would actively send the soldiers to another part just so that the soldiers aren't sitting around in the land. And it's the same thing in Europe. But the point is that this is something that's normal if you have these people, because these men who would otherwise not really be getting well paid if they're not at war are going to either cause trouble at home or they're going to control trouble abroad. So it's possible. And the thing is that with the poverty that when it comes to Africa, it's like the average age, I don't remember, but it might be like 13 now or something. You know what I mean? Like it's really young. And so, or the median age might be 13 or something. So it's really young. And because of that, the children, there's going to be young people, but it's going to be, it could be a bloodbath on several different places. And so I don't want us to, think that we it's gonna we have to recognize that the conditions when you want to plant a tree, the best time to plant the tree is 10 years ago. The second best is now.
The second best time is now.
I want to say the comment section. I didn't realize, but Nico's here and KW Don here and Aloof and Dreamin' is here. So Nico says, yeah, Nazi stories. My grandma was heavy on that. Miss Lou is a Jamaican woman that is famous for her folklore stories. So yeah, I think I might have heard Miss Lou's story. But I didn't hear from my mother. That was the problem. KW Don 7 says we need a benevolent dictatorship. I guess he was talking about the democracy part. And then Aloof and Dreamin' 4 says, morning from Milwaukee, question, are we just xenophilic in general due to how much we take the lead from other cultures, or were Africans forced to become xenophilic? And I mean, I think that's a large part, this question that he asked, just to answer it quickly, like I said, a large part, I don't want to say it was 2/3 of us that were killed on the continent, but that's a good estimation. Well, probably not the whole continent, but it's, but the point is that, a lot of areas were wiped out, and what's left behind when you wipe out, the soldiers or the men, and you wipe out, and your women are taken, and the children, and some of the children are left, and some of the elders are left, what's left is people that can be manipulated. And I mean, some people would say that there were African cultures that were, welcoming of strangers. And of course, if you're into trading with other people, or if you like trading with other people, of course you're going to be welcoming to people who come to you. And then there were also other cultures that were like more interior, that weren't into trading, and they weren't into, foreigners, and they were like killing white people on sight. So it really depends on where you're talking about, but I think that one of the things that make us xenophilic today would be, the European's rhetorical ethic, and a part of that rhetorical ethic is his religion, but also not his religion, because like Cicely is, stressing that, scientism and progressivism and liberalism, these are all ideas. Capitalism, these are all ideas that would make you feel xenophilic. Capitalism tells you, hey, look. I mean, yeah, capitalism tells you, look, let's try to make money. Let's, there's no color. The only important color is green. Like we hear that in the community. Like our people will tell us that, let's not look at race. I don't look at race. I look at money. You know what I mean? But those are, I would say, those make us more xenophilic. You want to, like, we do want to embrace our culture and try to recognize that the white man just has this, he's just deceptive. All warfare is based on deception. The person's at war with us, and we just don't know it. And if nothing else, I would say that, like you don't have to focus on one part, but I'd say it is totally, like, everything about them, or much of the things about them, are about war, Even, like I was pointing out the other day, I would just say this, you type a message, even on Twitter, or if you're typing a message on WhatsApp, right? You press the GIF button, and the GIF button will reply to whatever it is that you were saying inside the conversation. It's like I'm not going to say that they're reading your message per se, but they have algorithms to read your messages to, technically to make your experience a little better. But it's also, but it's also like everything like they can, if they wanted to, just have more control, more power over you. I think Cicely wants to say something. So
yeah, my old friend Dr. Obadale Cambon reminded me that we are here in Africa on the front lines. Make no mistake, we are all still at war. So that has to be understood. It's not something for us to cower from. It's for us to recognize exactly which fronts of the battle that we physically, where we're physically present. In the diaspora, that is behind enemy lines. And when you put it into that perspective, then you more or less understand, what your role and what your outcome is coming to be as well. Okay, so we have to face that. The other thing is that for the European Assembly, war and destruction is their culture, and it is holistic. They wage it holistically. Christianity is only one part of their war against our culture. Capitalism is only one part of their war against our culture. So they are waging a holistic war using their weapon, which is their culture, against us, who haven't mostly recognized that our culture is our weapon.
Exactly.
So we haven't fully engaged the battle yet. I'm not willing to relinquish it on that fact.
Yeah.
I don't want to discourage anybody from coming to Africa because we may face war here. We do face war here and have been for centuries. And thank goodness for the whatever level of organization that preceded us in this day, because we still have a land to come to.
Exactly.
And we still have people. The reason, one more point, the reason why the average age of the African person is so young is because we are still trying to replenish our numbers. This is a deeply cultural, biological war, holistic war. There is no way that our biology itself will leave us underrepresented in this world. You should see the number of children that people are producing over here.
You're right.
But they are replacing what is lost. We will never relinquish this land. Trust me, whatever the cost, we need to add it up and pay it. We will never relinquish this land. So I just want to be clear about that, because some people get real fearful when you start talking about repatriating, coming to Africa, and the Chinese and what everybody's going to do. No, I don't feed into that mentality, not one bit. Stand your ground. Whatever front you are in this war, stand your ground and do your damn job.
All right, so we're gonna go to the next one. You reminded me of the Khalid Muhammad quote though. Khalid Muhammad says, a lot of people would say it's not the white person, it's the system. It's not the white person, it's the system. And that sounds like saying it's not the spider, it's the spider web. It's not the spider, it's the spider web. So I thought that was another thing, because another thing that people would also blame would be like white supremacy. So it's like always we kind of go around the subject, but it is white people. I do not want to say that it's not necessarily their systems as well. Like, I don't want to say that you should get rid of the spider, but you also should clear the spider web. That's what I would say. I mean, it's not necessarily the case that you just focus on the spider, and it's definitely not the case that you just focus on the spider web. But you should clear out.
Clearly we need to neutralize systems. Yes.
Yeah. So we're gonna go to page 395. This is the last one. Hopefully, people at home are enjoying. If you do enjoy it, please do a like or whatever it is. is that you want to do, or a subscription, or even share it with some people, let them know. But all right, so let's go. The European mind struggles to find rational means to synthesis. What is the genius of African and majority cultures that their utamawazo implicitly reconcile dichotomies that for the European are inevitably reconcilable. Through the spiritualistic modalities of ritual and ancestor communion, through the sacralization of life, they achieve what rationalistic theories cannot offer. It is by employing the mode of participation and identification, by conceiving of the self as properly joined with other, indeed as defined in terms of other, and by valuing emotional response that unity and harmony are achieved. Ambivalence and ambiguity only become frighteningly and culturally destructive in the European context, which cannot deal with paradox. Majority cultures contain sophisticated mechanisms that turn these dimensions of human experience into yet another means of uniting people spiritually. I have said that the underlying principle that explains and unites the various aspects of European life and behavior is the need to control. This is directly related to and easily explains the European problem with loving. While control represents value, love does not. In terms of the European conception of human emotion, they are opposites. In this view, one loves to the extent that one gives up control of one's emotion. One controls oneself by not allowing oneself to love. The experience of control is predicated on the rigid separation and distinction between self and other. Love is the experiencing of self as being merged with other. A lack of control is repugnant to the European sense of self, conceived only as properly distinct from other. But this is not a universal conception of love. It is romanticized, unrealistic, and its issue out of the inadequacy of the European self. The African concept of love, while more pervasive, that is, it includes mutually respectful and reciprocal relationships of many kinds, is supported by the structures within the culture and is at the same time not obsessive. We do not risk the loss of self in love relationships because love is the natural state of being, offered before birth, guaranteed by the kin-based natures of the culture, and therefore taken for granted. It is not anxiety-producing, it is natural. Michael Bradley says that the European conception of romantic love is necessary to overcome the intense hostility between genders among the Caucasians. He refers to this as the truce of love. Ironically, obsession with ego results in the loss of self through a loss of meaningful contact with others. Fanatical self-autonomy becomes painful alienation. In 1988, the chronic loneliness and alienation reached a new height as people in America began to spend money to talk to strangers on the telephone. Forced into the isolation of their homes, they communicate with others who, from their own cells of self-imposed privacy, cry out for human contact. Phone numbers are now advertised on television that intensely isolated individuals can call in order to meet people, hear other human voices in an effort to affirm their own human existence, make confessions, attempt to communicate in a world that has obviously robbed them of the natural source of human interaction and warmth that we of majority cultures take for granted. In this view, anonymous sexual encounters in the park of America's cities become cultural, not individual pathology. Somehow the symbolism of these machines, television and telephone, which mechanize communication as substitutes for organic human interrelationships, human interpersonal interrelationship, is the penultimate statement of the failure and success of Europe. And I also want to say at the end of the page before, page 394, it says, let me see something. Oh yeah, so we have come full circle to Plato. For him, knowing was more important than loving, and to know meant knowing as an object, something separate and distinct from himself. Europeans perhaps do not love themselves and have no basis from which to love others. And I thought that was very interesting, the idea that Europeans do not love themselves and have no basis from which to love others. And I want to say that in the context of, BLM and, integration and all that kind of stuff. But we're going to put 7 minutes, and this was the last one, so, all that kind of jazz. But anybody have any comments on anything that was read just now?
Just that even though this book was came out in the 90s, just to bring that topic up to date a little bit, now we're using social media, and we also are facing a huge opioid crisis. And in America, there's a company that says America runs on Dunkin', which means coffee. But I'm saying America is running on Dunkin', coffee, cocaine, and also pills. So these pills are people are taking them for anxiety, depression, and all these other things. And it's a huge addiction crisis in the West in general, to the extent where these chemicals from all these drugs and narcotics and pills are part of the water system.
Mm-hmm.
If you can just imagine that. So just to bring that up to date to 2021, her the scholarship that Dr. Ani has put into this has bared itself out over the last 30, well, almost 30 years since the book came out. And we're clearly looking at it, and we're clearly looking at the outcome up until this point. And it's very nasty.
Anyone else have any comments? I like that one. Anyone else have any comments though? What I could say, what I want to say is, yeah, I thought it was interesting that, because my thing is that I don't want to focus too much on white folk. I know it's like the whole book is about white folk. I also want to hear about us. So I thought the African concept of love was pretty interesting, particularly, as I think we're encouraging. I mean, people were talking about Black Love Summer, as opposed to Hot Girl Summer or whatever. But like,
is that a thing? Is that a thing right now?
It's not a thing, but you
I
can
like
make it a thing.
though.
I know it can make it a thing. You know what I'm saying? I mean, want to make it a thing.
It was nice. Black Love Summer. It was nice.
It's a ring to it. You know what I mean? But anyway, but yeah, just the African concept of love, and I do notice, the lack of control, the people wanting to control themselves and all that kind of stuff. So it's I just thought I wanted to add this extra one. It's really not too essential. It's just a nice little, it's sweet. You know what I mean? But I also saw the phone line thing. Like you said, social media is now replacing that, and people should have interpersonal. They should meet with each other or engage each other. But there's this isolation in the West, and of course the West is failing people. So I do think that and that's what I say. Like when Cicely says, don't focus on Christianity so much, or Christianity is not the only thing. Like this is where this is also where it justifies. It's like the phone line has nothing to do with Christianity, in a sense. You know what I mean? But it's realistically speaking, you don't want to hammer on one thing. But I also find that we as a people have to concede that if you're doing this phone line stuff, there is not to say that that's a harmful thing, but if you're doing this, like if you're a part of this individualistic culture, you gotta you don't have to mind it, but you have to be actively aware that this is a part of the destruction of our civilization, in a sense. You know what I mean? I think fundamentally white people are well, I would say it this way. It's a little harsh, but I would say white people do act like a cancer, in a lot of senses. And so they are trying to destroy they're literally destroying this planet for what it's worth. Now, obviously, not all white people, are actively destroying the planet or whatever, but the planet's being destroyed, and the culprit, the main culprit is being,
I just want to add something on what you just said. Mm-hmm. Like, you see how funny it is when they invent, quote unquote, invent something. It's, we did this, we did that, this, and then when they destroy, they are the one destroying the planet. It's like, the human civilization is destroying.
Yes, bro. Absolutely.
It's not funny, but I have to laugh.
Hey, you're like, wait, when did I do that? Like we got a police spot. Like, no, you, man. Yeah, I know that. Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's like that's I think there's so much to this book. So I mean we don't have to finish this time. We actually ran over time so often. So anybody have any last comments? Anything? I mean, I know.
No, just on this chapter, I would add that it confirms what she's saying about they are like incomplete beings, and this void, they are trying to fill up this void with all kind of behaviors or drugs or whatever is under their hands at the time, but it's really a good illustration. Like they feel like a void inside, and that's what's driving them mad, actually.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is that I feel like the thing is it's going to come to us. One of the things one of the experiences I had, for some reason I was on Reddit, and when you're on Reddit, people don't know what you look like because everybody's anonymous in a sense, right? So for some reason, this white guy, I'm on like this dating kind of subreddit or whatever, right? So this white guy comes and he's just trying to, he's trying to like get advice from me because I gave out some, interesting advice, surprise, surprise. Anyway, so the white guy's all like, and what I'm getting insight into white culture straight from the horse's mouth, and how alienated he feels, how hard it is for him to navigate, and I'm just like, undercover, pretending to be a white guy kind of, in order to, like get what the white, and like this is it. It's this weird, like he's in Italy or something, right? So he's not in America. He's nothing to do with, he's no bigotry, whatever. But he has this, individualism, this personality, but this loneliness, this low sense of self-worth, this seeking value by trying to achieve and trying to be better than, but falling short or not necessarily, or this is what it is, and this is what white people are exporting to us, and this is what's coming into Africa, and though we, I mean I like Cicely's emphasis on, oh, we will not lose our land, I like that, but I feel like, and I know that we're different than the Asians in a sense, we're different from the Australians, we're different from the Native Americans, but I also feel like they would say the same thing, and of course they're saying it, again, like you said, we're different. Blah blah blah. But it's there. We there's a threat for us. I think Kamala Harris, she's the vice president. For people who don't know, she's the vice president of the United States, and she was saying, look, the future wars are going to be fought over water. She's telling me this. There's going to come a time if this global warming thing pans out that the house that I'm in New York is probably going to be underwater, or there's going to be like something like a gate formed so that it's not underwater, but not gate, but like a wall formed so it's not underwater. But the point is that rising water levels, scarcity of clean water, of desalinated water. These are realities that's going on. In Africa, there's this Lake Chad. There's this Lake Chad that's evaporated pretty much. Like 75% of it is gone from 50 years ago. Things are happening. The desert that I had a friend who was showing me the desert in their part of the country in like East Africa, and it's there where it wasn't before. You know what I mean? Like it used to be all the way down whatever. It's now like pushing next to the equator. They're in equatorial Africa, and they're seeing this desert just impeding on them. Like the geography of the world is changing, and the food supply, the water supply, these things are being challenged. And if they are challenged sufficiently, the technological people, the people with the advantage, the people who organized for tomorrow, are going to attack the people who didn't organize yesterday. And unfortunately, as much like it's going to be the case, could be the case that because even in America we see like a lot of us are like a lot of our biogenetic makeup is fading, But it could be the case that you go to Africa, in so many years, and you're going to find people who are the descendants of Africans, but they look like they would be the descendants of Europeans, or you're just going to find Europeans who say they're Africans. Because I was one time wearing a red, black, and green flag, okay, red, black, and green flag, wearing it, right? And this white woman walks up to me and says, "Oh, you're African. I'm African too." I'm like, get out of here, like what are you talking about? But she's telling me that she's a part of a church because what like we're in the hood, right? in the hood, there's these vans. There's these vans that, you know, like they drive in the hood and then they open up and then they do like kid like puppet shows and all that kind of stuff for the kids. And but it's like white Christianity. It's like a missionary Christian thing. She's telling me that she's a part of this Christian network that's active on the continent. That they recruited her from the continent. And she's all the way, you know, probably paid admission to go all the way down to Brooklyn, a hood in Brooklyn that, you know, I'm personally not like I'm looking over my shoulder, you know, like you know, it was pretty bad once upon a time. Let's just say that, you know, I can say that. I mean, just to, you know, I'm not, you know, gonna say. I'll say it this way: that my brother said that when he was younger, he was in that neighborhood and he saw a guy get chased down with a sniper rifle, you know, and shot in plain sight with a sniper rifle. So it's like, yeah, it's not the it wasn't the area that you. But this is what the people are doing. They're going to these areas and they're getting people and they're internationally coordinated. And if we're not internationally coordinated, the reality is that
Yes, we
we're
are.
accessible. I mean, okay. I mean, yeah, sure. Well, I mean, like there are definitely people who are definitely coordinated, but you know, yeah. I mean, yeah, sure. There are definitely people who are definitely coordinated. But another thing I do want to emphasize though is that we also have, like, I want to say a Scotty who are in positions of influence that can definitely sabotage a lot of things that we want to happen. That's good because you know there was a video I want to point out too to people that Boko Haram had like new weaponry, like obviously like World War II era weaponry, but still, you know, World War II wasn't like, you know, a cakewalk. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't a cakewalk, so it's not really that bad that you have World War II weaponry. It's not the most advanced thing on the planet today, but it's like for a group like some people would suspect that, you know, it wasn't necessarily accidental, you know. But I'll just leave it at that. Anyway, anybody else have any comments? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, just on Boko Haram stuff. Like, it's for me, it's a reenactment of what happened in 1885, like the scramble for Africa. So basically, and much before actually, because it always has been like the Arabs blocking the north and the trade routes in the north, and the European on the coast. In both of those groups making alliance to undermine us, and it's always the same story, and I don't see why this strategic alliance would change nowadays.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean that's what it is. I mean,
You're right. You're right,
bro.
bro.
Yeah, it's always the same. Like everybody's going to try to colonize the continent at the end of the day, and it's just. And it's not that we want to colonize it per se, but you know we have to, you know, put our hat in the game as well because I mean I don't know if I did mention
yes, it's always this, like we have to put something on the table also, to offer an alternative, and it gotta be of good quality also, like it gotta produce results.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and I don't definitely don't want to take the place of any colonizer. It's not advisable.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And I do think you would be putting yourself in a losing role if you came to Africa with that mindset.
Exactly.
Well, definitely.
Exactly. We saw how what happened to Liberia.
Oh yeah.
We saw what happened to Liberia.
Yeah, Liberia was yeah, I think that's probably sufficient for today. Oh no, the only thing I would say is that, you know, the Native, like what happened to the Native Americans was pretty like devastating, you know, just the total loss of their land, and we do not want that to happen to Africa. And of course, you know, we don't expect that to happen, but a part of the resistance is us, you know, a part of the resistance is us. Okay. But all right, so thank you so much everybody for joining. If you want to say any last comments or tell us where we could reach you guys, now would be the time. I appreciated this. I like the fact that you guys read with us. Oh yeah, we got to talk about what the next chapter would be. Or the next chapter would be is darn, it was on Twitter. I mean, it was on Twitter. I told you guys it should be.
8 and 9.
Yeah, I think 8 and
Yeah.
9.
Are we doing them one at a time?
You said, are we doing them one at a time?
Yeah.
8 and 9?
Yeah, I think it was 8 and 9. Yeah, 8 to 9. Only because I was trying to do like 100 pages, like a roughly 100 pages, and then like the last one would be chapter 10. Although only because I can't be here in 2 weeks, we could have 2 weeks for chapter 10. But 8 and 9 would be ideal for next week. All right, and obviously,
Yeah, 8 and 9.
yeah, because it's about 100 pages, and you know, we chapter 1 was 100 pages, and we managed it. So chapter 2 was 100 pages, so it just doesn't make sense to like read like 30 pages and then meet up for 30 pages or something, you know. But otherwise, thanks you so much. Oh, you guys were gonna tell me how to reach you guys.
Or you can reach me on Twitter.
Okay.
That's cool.
Me too, on Twitter.
Okay. I mean,
Twitter.
I meant not me personally. I meant like the people in the audience who want to reach you. But it's fine. I mean.
Yeah. You can reach me on Twitter at turbulent_LE. Turbulent__LE.
Okay. And all right. So all right. So and obviously I'm at Onitaset. I'm on the Pro Black Perspective. You're probably listening to it. Hopefully you're subscribed. If you're not subscribed, subscribe now. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining us. And KWAZ Radio said answer the questions from the listeners. I think I answered them. But yeah, there's no more questions. But if there's any questions from the listeners, now would be the time. But otherwise, thank you so much, everybody, for joining. And we'll talk another time. Next week, 8 to 9. And of course, Shemi Hotep. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, guys.
Have a good day.
All right, guys. Have a nice